Good evening, everyone. I call this meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you all for coming. We don't have anybody listed for the first Citizens Forum tonight. We will have another one at the end of the meeting, so if you'd like to speak to us at the end of the meeting, we have collected your names and addresses already. When I bring it up again, just raise your hand, state your name and address, and we will hear you at that time. Moving on to the consent agenda, I hereby move to adopt the consent agenda. Hearing no objections, the consent agenda is approved by unanimous consent. Next up will be Allison's superintendent update.
I just have a few things for you this evening. We have summer school up and going, as you know. We're actually finishing out the second week already, and I thought we'd just talk a little bit about how that's going. Mark Heck is here tonight. The PACE team is small but mighty, and we really are doing a great job. We have summer school moved this year at the high school, so most of our kids are being serviced at that building, but of course we have another site at Lenoy because of the construction in the district, and so our littlest learners are at Lenoy this year, and then of course we're using the pool, Glenbrook Gym. I think we've got some dance or something happening there. We're out at the archery range, and then of course we're in the community at the parks, so it's really been an effort, and it's wonderful when you're driving down to St. Augustine. It really feels like a camp town right now. You really have that camp feel. So checking in with those things. And Mark, just want to give a couple highlights, maybe to let the public and the board know how many students we have enrolled this year, and I don't know, just a little celebration and sharing.
Yeah, it's going great, and we've had it. I think it's been about 6 years or so that we've been in a row at the middle school. We've been at the high school before. We used to kind of flip-flop back and forth depending on what they had to get done as far as cleaning and different things like that. So it's nice to be back there. It's a really, really great building for our kids because it's real simple. The hallways are just nice straight lines. The middle school is a little more mazy, and it's a little more difficult for our little ones to remember where they're going. But both of them, you know, have positives. It's nice when you're at the middle school because you have the pool right there, and so you can just walk to it. Right now we have to kind of shuttle the kids back and forth to get them back and forth on time. But other than that, everything is going great. We are serving, just about 1,100, close to 1,100, between 1,000 and 1,100 meals a day. So we're serving anywhere from 360 to about 420 breakfasts. And that's based off of if we have our Build a Better Raider kids in. They're not there every single day, but when they're there, our numbers are up a little bit. And our lunches have gone as high as about 750, 760, 740, and then down to probably, you know, about 600 or so. But it's amazing, you know, if you kind of figure that throughout the course of the summer, we'll probably end up serving between 35 and 36,000 meals to our kids throughout the summer. So that's going great. Our classes, we have about 418 different classes throughout the whole summer. There's about 112 teachers or so that we have that are teaching right now. So it's pretty great. We have just about 1,000 kids at the high school right now, and we have about 150 kids at Lenoy right now. And then we have another 500 or so that are involved in different things that are maybe either off campus or they're things that are kind of done, things like band lessons, the Build a Better Raider. You know, we don't count those with our kids that are at the school. They're kind of doing their own thing and then they're gone. And then we have our A program that is servicing kids. A lot of those are done right at their house, at their home, at their farm. And so right now, at this time, we're probably right around 1,600 to 1,700 kids or so that are coming to summer school. Once we get through our 3 terms, we'll probably be close to between 2,800 and 2,900 kids or so, different kids that will come to at least one summer school class. So it's probably between almost 70% of our student population that will come to some type of summer school.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's been very, it's nice to pop in and see the different things, so. And then I was just going to update on the recent training that the learning leaders took part in. We did the SAIL Academy, which that acronym, another acronym in education, right? So it's the School Administrators Institute for Transformational Leadership. This it's a 2-year cohort, and we have done a learning leader retreat. So the learning leaders in the district, just a reminder, are all of our building level leaders, so principals and APs, and then the teaching and learning department, which would include Amy Ullman and Jenny and myself and Lindsay and Julie and Lara and the directors and such in the district. So we spent those 2 days in the Dells, 3 days actually. It's a 2-year cohort, and then this will be ongoing. So we'll go in again in November, I believe, and then in March. Jenny, is that right? And then next year we'll follow through with that. So the purpose of SAIL Academy, or the learning that we're doing, is to we're to a point now where we would really like to deeply impact the learning and the goals that we're doing, and do it in a manner that we can really drill deeper down into that and bring coherence to the district. So this is the book that we've been working through. And this is the book that we will continue to work through. So there's really a framework that goes along with the coherence model of leadership. And it's a shared process, which really was attractive to us. And it's the distributed leadership across the district, which we are embracing already, having the guiding coalitions in all of our buildings. So that was really a big bonus for us as well, because it fit in so well to the framework. And it's just, what we learned is that it's focused and it's doable, and it's putting things into the 100-day plans that we dabbled in last year, but this year we really feel like we have a handle on that. We feel very prepared moving into our 3D process. So I have a lot of my learning leader team is here tonight. So Jenny, if you want to add anything to it, and then if you want to kick it off to someone, that would be great.
So this was something that we tried to get into last year, but it fills up, and so and it opened in December, and I think it was about January or February that we reached out, and they told us that they were already full. So we said, can let us know when it is going out so that we can get signed up this time. A great process. I mean, we always felt pretty good about our 3D vision that we had established and started doing about 10 or 12 years ago. And you've heard about that as we brought that forward each August to kind of talk about our process in September. And then, we went through our what happened at that time with our guiding coalitions and our teams of people. And then we laid out the data for you as it became embargoed from the state, as well as our local data. And then we kind of always have wrapped it up with what those goals and action plans were, usually in November and December. And so, this process was great to actually be led by a team of people. So they have people who work with the cohort 1 and then people who work with the cohort 2. And so they really take you through, they have what they call mileposts, 10 mileposts. And we did about 3 of the mileposts each day. And what we really liked about it is there was a facilitated part of it, which might be a half hour, an hour session. And then they would send you, we were the second largest group. Their Oregon School District had, 35 people in cohort 2. So then we had our own room where they would send us to be able to do our conversations and focus on that work during that team time. And so we liked it because you had to have a timekeeper, and the timekeeper had to keep you focused. There was an inclusion specialist who made sure that all of the 18 voices around the table were being heard. There was an organizer who kind of was in charge of leading the team and facilitating it. And then there was a quality appraiser or a quality assurance who kind of at the end made sure that we were meeting our benchmarks and we met what we needed to. And then, there'd be a little break time, and a lot of times we worked through our break time, then back into the session to get kind of that next golden nugget so that we could go back and do the work. And so we felt really good when we were leaving, because we ended up with, and that's the nice part of it too, is and we've heard this before, that a lot of times you'll pick 8 to 10 goals that you want to accomplish. And they said the research on that is that you accomplish 1 to 2 of those. But if you really pick 2 to 3 goals and you really do a nice job of developing those out and focusing on them, you're more likely to accomplish those 2 or 3 goals. And so that was a good reminder for us because we all like to bite off more than what we probably should. And we just were able to keep reminding ourselves of, here's the brutal facts, here's where we're going to focus and do the work and bring back to our guiding coalitions when we have our 3D vision time and really hit those goals hard and have them look at their data for their buildings on those and then proceed with them. And so it was a great process to really experience. And like, we have a coach that now was checking in with us. She might pop into the meetings. She's a coach of other school districts as well. But she'll also be joining us during our learning leader meetings for 45 minutes to an hour every time that we meet, which is usually once a month. And kind of we'll have a standing agenda item to make sure that we're coming back to this, how we're doing, where we're going. Plus then we split up into 2 cohorts so that we're not all out of the district on the same days. And so that'll happen in November and March. And then next year, they kind of take a different focus and expand kind of the work that we do. So, but we're looking forward to the process. Lindsay and I tomorrow are meeting to fine tune our 3D vision time and incorporate this work. So our template will change. Our agenda will change based on, we won't do all 10-mile posts because remember, we did this for 3 days and we were busy. We're gonna try to bite off about half of these mile posts and do them with our 3D vision time and lead them through the process as well. So, but I'll turn it over to the other learning leaders that are here who were in that room with their sleeves rolled up doing the hard work.
For me, and I said it with our group of 18 there, and it was one of the best opportunities, and I mean wholeheartedly, to have voices being heard all around the table, and we had some really, really rich discussions where sometimes like opinions were swayed. I mean, throughout those discussions. So making sure with our inclusion people, making sure that everybody was heard. I just thought, I mean, it was awesome, and the work that we did really kind of came back, and it was on the way back home. It was like, wow, we just got a lot of work done, and felt like you got a really solid framework heading into the rest of the summer, and really kind of gearing up for 3D. So it was a super, super impactful conference that I've been to.
Like Jenny had said, when you have like 10 goals, you kind of skim the surface, right? And you do like a little bit of each one, trying to address each one. We went deep. Like, it was a lot of intense work, which I feel like in the past we've also felt like we were just getting to the good part, but then we needed to move on to the next thing. This really allowed us to really get through what we wanted to get through. And I was smiling at Curtis because I knew he was going to say that was one of the best, because he kept saying that over and over again. He was like, this is the best retreat we've been to in years. He kept saying that. And I agree. It was great.
There's doable, actionable steps. So now we have strategic, specific steps that we divvied out and said, okay, you're in charge of this step, you're in charge of this step, and like, it was a team. We had some tough discussions. Like Curtis said, some really deep conversations and rich. And I just feel like as a whole team, it really connected us, and it will guide us to even deeper and more difficult conversations. To talk about courageous conversations, we will continue to have those moving forward too.
I'll just add to that. I mean, I had heard about SAIL for a number of years now and never had the chance to participate in one. And then when Allie and Jenny informed the learning leaders that we were doing that, I was really excited and went through that, and it did not disappoint. I mean, it was exactly what I had heard it was, and what the others have said. I think it really puts us into a better situation moving forward to be targeted and focused and actually achieve the goals we're setting out to achieve.
Those guys said awesome stuff that I agree 100% with. I'll go with just a little different angle on it. What was also really nice is we've had some turnover in our team, with Matt being new last year, Brenda being new last year, Janitra coming in this year, and I think it gave us a good opportunity to collaborate as a new team with team members. When we had our data retreat last year, our 3D, Matt and Brenda were just trying to keep their heads above water of what's going on and what does this all mean. And now a year into it, we were all embarking on something a little different. And then bringing Janitra in was good to build those relationships within our learner leader team, because that is so important. So
I just have a couple of questions if you guys are done. So how do you deploy that in the district? That's like question one. And then two, is this something that could be summarized and brought back to us as education. So as you guys are talking about all this stuff, it like connects all the dots. Like you said 10, right? If there's 2 that it boils down to, the 2 that it is. So as you guys are maneuvering through the year, we can make sense of everything that you're doing and not have to ask a bunch of extra questions.
Yeah, so we have this 3D vision time, which is probably 85, 90 people in the district come together by their building level teams. And that's always been where we've done our goal setting. And we've, in the past, have focused our goals on literacy, math, SEL, and 4 Cs. This year, they had us take a little bit of a different approach of that. And so we have more that one that's on student learning, so that's kind of the literacy / math. And then we went a behavior focus. So there's the 2 goals now that have the action steps that we've created for our team to focus on. Now when the 3D vision time happens, like we said, we'll take probably 5 of these milestones to really focus on. And it's more of the, okay, let's look at the brutal facts of your data. Let's look at ambitious goals that are connected to the district goals, because obviously we're not now going to set, each building's not going to set 2 different goals that stray away from what we found was important. And then let's create those action steps. But along the way, we have to do some reducing and then prioritizing of strategies that we know that work. There's also, like they call a theory of action. So then we have to hit on these if then. So if this happens, then we know this can happen. And that really helps us to narrow down what our focus should be in those action plans. So that's what we'll lead our teams through. And one thing that we've always emphasized is that we want our goals to be interconnected. So we've got district goals, we've got building goals, and then even our teams develop goals as well. And then each of the teachers have to have what we call student learning objectives, that they, part of their educator effectiveness. All of that links together so that it's not, we got this going on here, this going on here. So that is really what our focus will be this year. It's been our focus in the past, but we've probably still been too broad and too all over the place, and this is really narrowing that focus. I heard our principal say, our teachers are going to be excited, our teams are going to be excited that like, these are our 2 goals, that, okay, we can do this is accomplishable. Let's really, in our 100-day plans, focus on those 2 to 3 big things that we can take care of in this 100-day plan. And then reevaluate what measurement, evidence, now what are we going to do the next 100 days? Then what are we going to do the next 100 days? Now always have that measurement and evidence. And we might not accomplish something, then we know that probably carries on to the next 100-day plan. So I think it just interconnects it and it makes that process really smooth.
Okay, that makes sense.
So when will those goals be established? They are?
So the 3D vision, they'll set their school goals.
Okay.
Then
In August.
in August.
Okay.
Then we usually do an update with you sometime in September just to talk about the process that we used. Then at the end of September on our Professional Development and Learning Day, the morning, I would say the last 3 years now, has been building wide of whatever process we've decided to use. This year it'll be some of this as well, that those guiding coalition teams for each building will share. These are the goals we established in the action steps. Now, how can your teacher teams help to support these? And what can you do to help us achieve these goals within your grade levels, within the elective areas or the specialist areas, and our different teams, our learning support teachers, our student center coaches, whatever it might be. We've then usually brought all of that to you after we've kind of rolled out the data in November or December and specifically focused on here are the goals, here's what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, because then you've had the background onto the data of, for example, we have a behavior one. The behavior one is that up in some buildings, elementary specifically, our males are 5 times referred or have incidents with behavior than our females. So that's the goal that we set of like, we've got to reduce that. If we can reduce the number of male students being referred, then we're going to see an improvement in behavior. So all of our goals then in building and teams and SLOs can hopefully connect to that and relate to it, so it's cohesive.
So is it we're trying to shift, I'm going back to the behavior thing, the males versus females. Are we then going to shift how we do something, do you think? To change behavior, right? We're not gonna dilute things and say, all right, where behaviors are gonna be allowed differently. So we're gonna be able to look at the data and try to identify the
You
things out
guys
there.
wanna answer what was put into the action plans? I mean, each of you.
Or again, you guys need to put this together, bring us,
Exactly.
I'm patient, I'll wait, I was just curious if we'd see some detail,
No,
just to educate us.
I really think like even with, I mean, with both the academic and the behavior, the first thing is like Jenny talked about, really, they call it with SAIL like the brutal facts. It's really looking at your data and like what is like really glaring that sometimes is uncomfortable to talk about, and some people want to shy away from it. But when I think about like the whole SAIL thing, like I think about like less is more. We get rid of a lot of distractions, and I feel like everybody's rowing in the same direction. We don't have different groups doing their own little things with their own little celebrations. This time, I mean, it's everybody in the boat rowing the same direction and together, you know, not having those other distractions and people being able to hold each other accountable because everybody knows what that goal is. We're really going to see that progress. As it relates to behavior, like I can speak specifically for Glenbrook, like our Guiding Coalition, our book study team, and our PBIS. We'll continue to drill down into the data. Where are those areas where some of these things are happening more? We'll take a look at some behavior academies. Julie and her department, we've got the Behavior Academy coming in this summer. I know again at our school we've got quite a few people signed up for that. We'll take some of those ideas and strategies and try to figure out how can we, you know, be more proactive rather than just reactive with the behavior. So a lot of education there. But again, we have a spot that we can focus on right away. So.
Okay.
And Steve, with your example with boys, to like elaborate on that, we talked a lot about just like the psychology of boys, what makes boys tick, and then what are we doing each day, and does that work for little boys or does it not work for little boys? And I know I'm overgeneralizing, but what it came down to was student engagement. So what can we be changing as teachers and how we're presenting the material and how they're experiencing school each day so that we don't see these behaviors? So it's not like we're allowing behaviors and saying like, sure, do what you want, we don't want referrals. It's more about, well, what are we gonna change about our practice so that they're enjoying school more and we're not seeing that type of behavior so that in effect there are less referrals. So it's more about what can we do to train our teachers to make sure that those outcomes are different.
And I think we actually, off of that conversation, then really had a deep conversation around the fact that not every building is doing referrals the same way, and some buildings don't do any referrals, and so what does that mean? So we have to have the open conversation with our staff that, you know, we want the referrals to come forth so we really can use some data and really know that there's information there for us, and then that was, well, who do we need to get on the same page, or where do we need to do training? Are we working with paraprofessionals? Are we working with teachers? No, we have to work with everyone that would ever touch a referral, and how does that process look? So it just took us down paths that we knew we could concentrate on one goal, but we know that the work is very deep within that one goal. And for us, that feels much more comfortable. And I think for our teachers, it's going to feel much more comfortable because now they know that there's a central spot where they're working and what they're looking at, and we can have a very open conversation in all of the buildings about that because we feel comfortable in it. So.
Yeah, and I think it'd be interesting to see the building by building data to see the differences. And I think, I mean, the word referral, right, comes across as negative.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it should be viewed as negative though, right?
We
We're
don't
bringing
either.
forth information to help us be consistent and provide a healthy learning environment.
It's interesting that you say that because we specifically had that conversation around the word referral and changed it to incident.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's an incident that happens. It's a learning opportunity. It's a way that we can reteach. We can review those expectations. We went through, I just pulled up our roadmap. We went through an if-then activity where if we develop common expectations and provide continual professional development and learning on how to teach and support positive behaviors within our schools and classrooms with an emphasis on strategies, then we will have greater consistency on how we respond to those challenging behaviors. That consistency, the common language, the common expectations, how we can interact specifically, like Brooke said, with our male students. What do we need to change as adults sometimes as our learning as well?
Right. Very good.
I like the way you talked about how everything tied in, and I know you had asked for a report or something. I would say, as you're sharing these things, you can just say, this is something that we touched on in SAIL, and here's what it looked like. So I don't think necessarily need like a complete separate report. Just tie in with what you're doing, because it sounds like everything is just so spiraled together.
Yeah, I like the honed in goals and being able to, really focus in on that. So I really love what you guys reported back.
I don't have anything else on my update. I just was gonna do just a reminder that we do not have a workshop in July. So actually our next meeting that we would have would be the board retreat on July 14th. And then we have a business meeting on July 17th. So,
Is it in August where we start going to other buildings? Is that your plan?
not until the annual meeting.
Okay.
And just a reminder that I will be out of the district until Monday, July 8th after the meeting tonight.
Enjoy your time.
All right, now we have a very special guest that we're going to celebrate tonight.
Me, huh?
Yeah. It's not me.
Ready?
So a few months ago, Mr. Heck had reached out to me and said, Mr. Smith, can I talk to you about something? Yeah, let's talk. And so he brought to my attention that we might have one more special graduate in the class of 2024. So we're here tonight to celebrate not only a local, but truly a state and national hero. And before we get on to the school business, Mr. Heck has an additional piece to this that he needs to share with everyone, okay?
Yeah. So I think a lot of you remember back on May 28th, May 28th, okay? We had a parade, and it was pretty neat because it was a one-man parade, and you don't see that very often. And we were talking about it and kind of doing that, and I one of our students that comes to us, their mom works with Congressman Gallagher. And I was telling her the story just about it. She goes, oh my gosh, I really think that he would like that. And so Mr. Gallagher, who is a Marine himself, put together a proclamation, and he read this on the Congress floor. And this was read on April 19th, and this was the very last proclamation that Congressman Gallagher ever did. So this is the last one that he did on the floor. And I'm just going to read this. He read this in front of the Congress floor, and he probably sounded a lot better than I'll sound right now. But this is how it went. Mr. Speaker, today I rise and recognize the life of a remarkable man, Mr. Eugene Jack Krzyzewski, a World War II veteran, father, grandfather, and friend. Jack has dedicated his impressive life to serving the United States and his community. Jack was born on April 15, 1924. Grew up on his family farm and attended school in Pulaski, Wisconsin. However, Jack did not finish high school. He was drafted into the Army at the age of 18 before graduation. Jack was quickly sent off from a small town of Pulaski to Fort Houlihan, Texas for basic training. At basic training, he was extremely successful, where he studied and eventually became part of the anti-aircraft unit. After basic training, he went on to be deployed and stationed all throughout Europe, including Scotland, England, France, Belgium, and Germany. From March of 1943 to February of 1946, Jack valiantly served our country during the height of its tensions of World War II. Jack was even present on D-Day at the invasion of Normandy, one of the largest amphibious invasions in modern warfare history. All the way from northeast Wisconsin, Jack was on the front lines of the most notorious invasions in the United States military history. I extend my sincere appreciation and thanks to Jack for his unwavering service and commitment to the United States of America. Following his discharge from the military, Jack returned home and married the love of his life, Marjorie Stender, on October 11th, 1958. Jack and Marjorie enjoyed nearly 60 years together and would grow their family, welcoming their two daughters, Anne and Ruth. Mr. Speaker, I once again extend my sincere thanks for Jack for his unwavering service and dedication to the United States. He truly embodies all that it means to be part of the greatest generation. Our nation is safer because of his selfless commitment and service. I urge members of this body to join me in honoring Mr. Eugene Jack Krzyzewski in recognition of his service. Mr. Krzyzewski is deserving of the highest degree of recognition. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
you all very much. I will deserve all of this. I was drafted. I did what I was told to do. And I guess all of us did. And then anyhow, in my unit, whatever we were told to do, we did. And I want to thank you people so much for that parade you gave me. It just was, I cried all the while. Why are you doing this all for me? Anyhow, the big banners up across the street, and all the guys with the colors and the color guard and the firing squad and everybody. It was so emotional, and I enjoyed it very much. And maybe you guys don't know it, but when we got to Dallas after a few switches, people came up to me, and there was 3 of us from Wisconsin going to this celebration, 80-year celebration, and we're there, and one guy said, "Are you the guy that had this special parade for yourself?" I said, "Yeah." And then a couple more talked about it. That was in Dallas. And the next day we flew to France. Would you believe that people knew it there? There were other soldiers. So how did that news travel that fast? And some said they saw it on the internet, and some just heard it, some saw it. I was treated a little more special over there. When the president came there, bless his soul, anyhow, there were 4 buses of us. So the captain of the bus picked one person from the bus to go on center stage. And I was picked on center stage. And I went right next to Joe, but I saw that people, ladies and gentlemen, you cannot believe how many people there were to welcome us. And everybody wanted to shake our hands. They would wave flags. They reached out their hands to shake our hands. They said, "Thank you for service." Believe it or not, we had red carpet treatment in some places, right, Bruce? Actually, red carpets. And there wasn't anything they didn't do for us. And it was such a good trip. But, yeah. So, anyhow, 4 of us went up on center stage, and I was thrilled. I was behind Joe, and so, Mr. President. Yeah, so it was a special trip, and the biggest thing is, how was I picked to be selected to go? I don't know how they did it. The American Airlines picked the guys that were going. We did fill out an application, Ruth and I, sent it in, and I was in the hospital at the time, and an email came, and Ruth said, "You were picked to go back." And oh, it was great. And I was so sick, I had COVID. I was in special treatment for 10 days. I either ate nothing, drank anything, and you all can ask Ruth, they gave me up for gone. Anyhow, when I heard that, I perked up. So, it was just special to be back to work. And yeah. And I want to thank all of you who made it possible for me to have this parade, and from there on be honored as much as I was.
Thanks, Jack.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mashesky, while I'm saying a few things here, I ask you to get prepared to receive your diploma, okay? With that, I'll ask Board President Jennifer to assist.
While you're talking about that, the flag was flown, the United States flag was flown in the Capitol, and they sent it to me and said that was flown in my honor on the 30th and stuff. And my daughter said, "Where are we gonna hang this? No room in the house." And then it's 5 by 8. So I said, "Well, it'll fit over my casket." So, but, yeah, I don't know how I did get all this.
We do. They want to make you a graduate of Pulaski High School.
So we have a board policy called High School Diplomas for Veterans,
Yeah.
and I verified that Mr. Kraszewski meets our criteria. Spoke with Mrs. Space, our superintendent, and when Mr. Heck had first told me about this, my initial reaction was, this is a long time overdue. But as I thought more about it, I strongly believe things work out the way they were meant to work out. There probably wasn't a better time for this to happen than right now. So, Eugene Jack Kraszewski, please come receive your diploma.
Okay. He worked hard for that. Walk it.
Thank you, sir. Congratulations.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We're going to flip your tassel from right to left to signify that you are now a graduate.
So I like to tell good thing to take pictures. I graduate, so I'll show 'em. I got a diploma.
You earned that.
Thank you,
so
sir.
much.
You're welcome. Okay. Take this along.
Yeah, it's yours.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, boy.
Sure.
Thanks again, everybody.
Thanks, Jack.
All right,
The highlight of the day.
our friends in blue, that's something to follow.
St. Jess actually said that amongst herself. We have to follow that.
All right, we have our SRO update. So just some background. Last time our SROs and chiefs, Captain Olson, were here. We talked a lot about time spent and where they were spending their time and looking for some better equity across the district. So they are here to speak about what they've been up to, what they're working on, and then some solutions for that.
So Chief Kitson and I met, and we're trying to figure out how best to accomplish that. There's some obviously jurisdictional things that go on with the school district because you guys are so vast and in so many areas. And so we're trying to figure out how to balance that with also the need of the Sunnyside. So what we had come up with is to make it, we'll explain why, but we're going to ultimately have Zach go to the middle school for 4 hours a week. So right now he's 50% in Hillcrest, 50% Illinois. He'll dedicate 4 hours a week to the middle school, which will then allow Josh to spend those same 4 dedicated hours additionally in Sunnyside in addition to what's already happening. That time we are confident will definitely make an impact on a percentage of time spent there. The reason we are going that direction is simply because at the current moment, there's a MOU between our agencies as far as police powers in the different jurisdictions. And Chief Kitzman has one already with the Oconto County Sheriff's Department, which is where Sunnyside is. And it just didn't seem prudent for our department to also then try to obtain one with the Oconto County Sheriff's Department. So this allows us to implement this with the MOUs that are already in place. And then the second really consideration of that is Zach will have a lot of relationships with students in the middle school from his current years in the schools. So he'll already have some relationships there that he can build upon, versus if he were to go to Sunnyside, he would know probably nobody. Versus now Josh, when he goes over to Sunnyside, has those relationships that he can continue to foster in those 4 hours. So that was kind of our plan and our thought process to really balance out and make sure Sunnyside is getting some more attention, I guess, more.
So then the way that we kind of see that working, and that's the reports that you guys have. So if you look at page 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, that just shows what their current actual hours were based on the activity reports that they fill out. That doesn't take into account admin time or other traffic stuff that they do. This is just at the schools. So that just gives you a snapshot of March, April, and May for both SROs across their respective schools. And then if you go to the other chart for April and May, that one I kind of broke down of what April and May would look like with this Hobart Lawrence change implemented, if it was the exact same hours. So if you look at chart 1 on April, and this is for Josh, chart 1 of April 24, you can kind of see it wasn't bad between the middle school, Sunnyside, and I put Fairview in there. But now you go to chart 2 for April 2024, just him having those extra hours, you can see that pie chart really kind of balances out. And I put Fairview in there as an equal amount of time. That doesn't mean that he has to. I just split it down the middle for the whole month just to give a good representation. And then if you look at May of 24, that was a kind of a low end of it because he didn't, for what I didn't really dig into why, but in this month, he didn't spend a lot of time at Sunnyside for whatever reason. But had he had more time, that piece of that chart gets a little bit bigger for Sunnyside, which equates to more time at Sunnyside. So that's just a little snapshot of what we hope to accomplish by Zach coming here for 4 hours a week, 16 hours a month, allowing Josh then to divide that time between Sunnyside or Fairview, whatever those schools need. I think it's a good starting point to kind of balance that equality between all the schools.
Is the 4 hours a maximum, or is that just the starting point, like you just said?
Yes, this is just an idea. I mean, we still have some summer left. As a matter of fact, we'll have to meet with Allison to kind of really iron it out and be like, yep, this is our idea. But this was kind of the way that we just thought would be a good starting point. Let's see how it goes. I'm sure we can always make changes or just to kind of balance it out as we progress through it.
And is the curriculum set for next year?
To my
for the
understanding,
teaching?
yes. Yep, we're all set to go.
So the math isn't mapping here for me, Chief. How do we get to 100% on these pies?
This is just the schools.
So just those 3
Yeah,
schools?
so this, like I said, this isn't gonna take into account admin time. So
Gotcha,
what I did is
okay.
I just took their activity report,
Gotcha.
I separated out all that other stuff and just slapped them into these pies. So they might not equal out to be 100%.
This is just the time in the
It's
schools?
just the time in those schools, yes.
So is 4 hours in addition per week going to give him the time to teach the curriculum we're talking about?
I think that's yet to be determined. Again, I think it's a good starting point. And I think if Josh, it's gonna have to be good communication between Josh and I, where if he comes to me and says, listen, I'm getting really stretched thin, I can't get my curriculum done along with my other duties, then the 3 of us need to come together and be like, okay, what is another possible alternative that we can do to make this work? Because the last thing we wanna do is put any undue stress on Josh with trying to get things done, because that's just gonna have a snowball effect and it's just not gonna work. So I think it's just a starting point because we don't know exactly how this new curriculum is going to look time-wise. And then we'll adjust to it. We'll adjust to it to make it the best that we can.
I would say Laura and I met with, it was in May sometime, and we could see where elementary was heading, and like they wanted this and they wanted that, and then finally we said, remember, it's one SRO officer, and he can't teach all of this, and so then there started to be some of that reality when they started to put it into a calendar year of like, oh yeah, we have to pull back on this. We can't expect them to do that. So then there were some conversations of counselors helping out, and so
we also met then in June, I think, and all 3 SROs were there to talk specific, kind of drill down a little bit even more narrow focus. What are learning targets? What are the specific areas that we want to talk about? Counselor going to take this, SRO going to take this, going to tag team it. How are they going to work on it together? And I would say we have a pretty good, I'll call it scope and sequence of what we wanted to lay out across all elementary buildings, as well as, okay, we're touching base with kindergarten in like October, but then we don't really need to see them again until like January. So it's not every month that they're teaching every grade level or that they're working with every grade level, but they're touching on every grade level throughout the year at least twice, I would say. Adam or
Yeah, so kind of the calendar pieces in place. We met end of April, beginning of June time. So all the calendars are set in place, and it's up to kind of the building principal just to put a time on them. But each grade level will have 2 lessons per year, or 2 times we are in front of them, 2 different lessons. So kind of what we were talking about too is to have myself, Josh, and then Zach teach approximately about twice a week, but only like 4-hour-ish blocks, to not fill a whole day where we couldn't go somewhere else if needed. So that's about 8 hours a week in direct contact with the kids, teaching and whatnot. But it looks pretty clean, and same topics we kind of taught previously, just a little more on middle school and then high school end for sure. But 2 times a year for elementary, we should be in each grade level.
We also got creative too, I would say, with middle school and high school, and bringing in some of our technology resources and how we're going, I'm gonna say Hunter especially is gonna be in front of the camera a little bit more and be throwing out some homeroom lessons to all of our students.
All right.
An awesome opportunity for our kids, and again, get face out there, like proactive. That's, really this is all about being proactive.
And kind of for like high school lens, off the top of my mind, it's about like once a month I'm actually giving like direct curriculum per se to a certain grade level, but then like broadcast team and I will do like 9 topics throughout the year, one different one each month, like vandalism or driving behavior, whatever it might be, and then we'll kind of just have that open discussion and it can be sent to wherever. But I think we're in a good spot to go into 25 school year here.
And I think it's important to note that just with bringing Josh on, the administration at Fairview and Sunnyside are already thrilled with the extra that Josh is doing. So then I think it's important to note that these extra 4 hours, 16 hours a month, that's in addition to what he's already doing, not just only 16 hours. So it just gives him 16 hours more, and then the middle school isn't losing anything. So it's just a building block. It's just our first building block.
And we'll schedule, they'll figure out between the 2 of them, like formalize this 4 hours that will be in the middle school, so at the same time that Josh can use those same 4 hours. So it won't be like Zach just goes whatever 4 hours he wants, and Josh, you know what I mean? So they're not at the school at the same time. So we'll make sure that it's scheduled in some way. I guess yet to be determined. We didn't go quite that far to make sure it's as efficient and hopefully gets us our goal.
So for the allocation report that you guys publish, it's Pulaski PD focused only. Can we get a consolidated report now that Zach's role is going to change a little bit and get a page in there for Zach going forward?
I mean, we can, but again, our percentages are different in the fact that it was 50-50 until we potentially implement this.
Yeah, once we get down the road where
yeah.
it makes sense to add it.
Yeah, and it really, we could, but it's fixed 18 hours in one school, 18 in the other, and 4 in the middle school. The percentages are always going to stay the same as well. So, we certainly can. I just don't know that that's going to really give you much additional information, at least for the first few months. But, certainly easy enough to make that pie chart if you'd like us to. So.
Where are we at with Safety Week? So we have that hammered out, set, sewn, ready to go?
Yeah, so I reached out earlier this week and we have a meeting set up for mid-July with Pat to kind of formalize exactly what our kind of expectation is or what we're going to move to for those. But I think the plan in place is 3 a year throughout the school year here.
And I was talking with Pat about this, and I think I'm part of the meeting. I think I've been invited, maybe not. I don't know.
We'll double check, but I believe so.
I think so. We were talking about educational piece for families, because we know that Hunter and I have had a lot of those conversations just about drills and what do families and what are we going to do, like even when it's registration time, and are we going to give information more on our website, and how does all that work, or how can they report, and just running through some of those things. So I think it would be a good idea for us to just explore some things, maybe like something in the evening that would be nice for our families to be able to take part in and come in and hear about, you know, this is what it looks like, this is how we do an ALICE drill. Not to the part that we're infringing on integrity of how safety is run in the district, but at the same time, letting families ask questions and understanding, you know, what questions come forth, and just having some involvement, having our SROs kind of run that event in the evening. So I think that would be important, at least one of our weeks during, you know, safety week, that one time a year, maybe twice a year, we have some time where families are invited in if they want to attend. And we could run those out at a different building, you know, we can run them wherever in the district. So just an idea. So we'll talk more about that, but I think that there'll be a welcome assets. I think, you know, everyone can focus on some of that and take some time to spend some extra time during those weeks. But it's not just safety 3 times a year. We won't be talking about safety all the time, but it's great to have that focus. So we're excited to do that.
That's where I think the one pager comes into for those people that don't come to the meetings or watch the meetings.
Okay.
Then they can see that Hobart's involved, and
Yeah.
you know, Zach, at these schools. I mean, we all get it, but not everybody does.
Yeah, and I think our building principals, you know, that could be very easily added into some of their communication that goes out. You know, or just like, hey, Officer Zach is here on these days, or whatever. So.
All right, last question for me. Speak up, speak out, speak out, speak up, whichever way it goes. We have that link on our website now. Do we all have the accounts set up that need to be set up so that the reports are coming through to you, to law enforcement?
It is all set up through them. So once that's, if you are anybody in this area, they locate us, they know what school district you're in, they contact us. It's all, when things have come in, it comes directly into us.
Okay,
So
do you guys have access to that? Like, is it?
It isn't an access point. They just know that, like, that wouldn't come from us of like an access point. It just is known that this is a parent in the Pulaski School District, or not in the village of Pulaski. If it doesn't touch the village of Pulaski, then it would touch Oconto, or it would touch wherever the jurisdiction is. It would probably go directly to that. But the school would be notified because it also is sorted by district. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, when I saw the presentation, they would also have access to an account to see any reports that were made if they weren't like imminent, because obviously things move quickly if it's imminent, but not if it's just a weird thing happening in the high school. That's how it was explained to us, that
Okay,
there
well,
would be.
I'll dig a little
Okay.
deeper in that, but I thought that is, because that is supposed to be not just statewide, but anywhere wide,
Yeah.
that it needs to get where it needs to get. So it's like almost like GPS location type thing, but
Yeah.
we certainly can look into it.
Check it out.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you for adjusting those hours. Appreciate it.
Yes. And then will you just make sure there's a blurb in our student handbook, high school student handbook, about that explains to families that when they're signing off, we know that reporting system is available to students, that it's prominent somewhere in our handbook. If we're using that resource, we need to get it out there, make it easily accessible so students know what it is. Right now we have a link, but it doesn't really explain much.
Yeah, and they do have some like posters and things that can be ordered to be placed around the school. And
Yes,
so we plan
please.
to do that as well.
Awesome, thank you, thank you, thank you.
No one's gonna use it if they don't know about it. Right?
Yeah, exactly. All right, anything else for us, guys?
Nope.
Okay, thank you guys.
Thank you.
All right, up next is WIA membership approval.
So Janelle's not here with us this evening, but this is the time of year, it's a formality of having you renew our annual WIA membership. It has changed a little bit this year. We used to actually have a paper document to sign, and now it is online. I know, Jennifer, the information was shared with you already, so Janelle is asking for you to fill out and sign the annual WIA membership renewal for 24-25.
Move that we approve the membership renewal.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, guys. That was an easy one. All right, breakfast and lunch prices. Hi.
And so John's here as well. The memo was shared. We're proud as a food service department to bring forward a no price increase, at least for the second year in a row. You know, if you've been in the grocery store, you know, cost of food is increasing. We still have a strong fund balance due to meals being served during COVID, and even this year, with meals being at charge or free or reduced, they still ran a profit. So able to do this again. John keeps telling me we're not gonna be able to do this forever.
That's why he brought you here.
Yeah. One of the other reasons we're favorable, and a little bit of a plug, is staffing shortage. So just a thank you to John and Chris for filling in as kitchen leads basically the whole year, and then the rest of the staff for picking up roles. So one of the reasons is our labor cost is down because we can't fill a position. So, we're very flexible in the food service department. If you want to pair it with another job that you're currently working, we can work out something. Or if you're just looking for a few hours to get into school and get out of the house, please look at applying.
It's not like we can't fill a position, we just had some long-term medical kitchen leads out that were out longer than expected. So we want to give them every opportunity to return to their job that they have, so.
John, as long as you're here tonight, I want to share, I know I've shared it before, how much I heard from the kids that they enjoy being at Fairview.
Yeah.
And I have a granddaughter there. And after you were gone for a little bit, she goes, when are we getting that cool dude back again? So just so you know that, the kids appreciated you.
Yeah, it's a great school there. It's small and you get to know all the kids' names, and I really enjoyed my time at Fairview.
So, go ahead.
Do we have a required spend down then? Is this one of those accounts?
Yeah, so our required spend down is going into our third year is to use funds, one for referendum for the new kitchens, and then updating the other kitchens. We haven't gotten our letter this year. Last year's letter was $350,000 spent down. This one year will probably be about the same. So we have time to do it. One of these years, as we're alluding to, it will catch up to us that having meal prices at cost is going to result in us running negative, but we have the fund balance to cover it.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, so do we have a good line on the cost of food versus the cost of labor, so we can see when we'll hit that point?
Yeah.
So we can stay ahead of it?
Yeah, but I mean, John we can sit down and he can tell us how we're making 10 cents on a breakfast and a few cents on a lunch when we hit that threshold, so.
Okay.
Any other conversation?
You feel that right now to keep it here would be good instead of doing like a little increase, and then when we do have to increase, do another one, so it's not like.
Yeah, I mean, we consider that, even our increases are usually minimal, so, that jump would be, you're talking a quarter, it's not like we're gonna double our price all of a sudden 1 year.
Well, the spend down kind of prevents us from increasing anyways, right?
Right, yeah, we'd be working against ourselves a little bit.
Yeah, okay.
And hopefully inflation comes down for families when they're trying to buy food for their, all the kids in their family and things like that. So I think that's why when Mark talked about PACE in summer school, I think that's why we're seeing a huge increase in how many kids are participating in the breakfast and lunch programs, was that it costs a lot of money to feed kids these days. Loaf of bread and some lunch meat.
I'm sending my kids tomorrow.
Alright, we just need.
I'll make a motion to approve the lunch pricing.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any other questions, conversation? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, John. All right, next up, SEL curriculum proposal.
That's me. So I'm bringing forward to you a recommendation to approve a resource for our 4K through 5th grade social emotional learning. And I'll kind of go through background and history and kind of how we got to this point, and then up for any questions that you may have. So you can go ahead and close the next slide. Social emotional learning. So SEL, it's kind of that buzzword, you hear it often, just the basics. Truly, the foundation is on relationships, how students interact with each other, how students interact with their teachers, how teachers interact with students interact with their families. It's that back and forth interaction throughout all of their day. It's not just a moment in time, it's their entire school day, how they're learning socially, emotionally, and academically. So looking at them as that whole child and truly growing and developing our children to be their best selves throughout the day. One of the questions that was brought to me a little bit was about the CASTLE framework. And what I want to focus on here is really those outer circles, the dark blue to light blue to lighter, that piece of are students needing classroom interactions, then interactions within their schools, then those interactions carried on to those families and caregivers, and then ultimately to the community. It's all encompassing. So what we do in our classrooms impacts every other outer circle. And we talk about the Pulaski Community School District. All of those things that we do as a community truly are who our kids represent and who they are as individuals. So really looking at that being all encompassing when we're interacting with one another, when we're learning together, when we're teaching the skills for each of our students. Kind of to give some history and some background on how we got here today, this has been in the works for at least 4 years since COVID. So SEL again was that big buzzword during COVID. So that social emotional learning, how are our kids going to interact? How are they going to be resilient? How are they going to come back after being out of school and being at home learning? What does that look like? So one of the things our district did during that time was we developed our own lesson plans for kids to utilize within their classrooms, both virtually as well as once we did return to in-person learning. And those were, we had a topic each month, and we kind of developed individual lessons for elementary, middle, and high school for our staff to follow and to implement. It was a little bit more of being very transparent, a little bit more grab and go approach where this is a theme, let's find some lessons that align with it and share those with our kids. Not as strategic and as structured as we would like it to be, so, and not as universal. Then in 22-23, we started our envisioning our future work. So looking at all of the areas and specifically that standards of the heart. I think actually, Jennifer, you might have been in one of my breakout sessions that time. Maybe even you, Heidi, I don't remember who else stopped in. But at that point, we had conversations about what do our kids need at school? How are they going to be impacted by COVID specifically, but then also just their interactions with one another. So we took a lot of that feedback, we brought that to our staff and asked questions. What are we looking for? What do we need to change? What do we need to improve? What strategies? What supports? So through that Standards of the Heart pillar work within this last school year, we had talked about 2 goals. Our main 2 goals, one of our goals specifically, I just want to read it, was focusing on fostering healthy and positive relationships so that all individuals in our schools have a positive sense of self and are able to access and engage in activities offered by the school community as desired. So specifically within that goal, we created action steps, as we always do with our goals. And in that goal, one of them was to look and identify social and emotional learning resources. So what are some resources that are out there? And then to really ultimately come forward with an adoption for the 24-25 school year. So in the spring then, and I'll get deeper into that, but we really looked at a couple different options for resources and went forward with a resource pilot this past spring. Within that, in December, we had a social emotional learning committee come together that had a representative from every grade level. Elementary wise, we knew it's kind of that go slow to go fast. Let's steal one of Curtis's phrases to really do it purposefully and make sure that we were strategic about it. So we were starting with our littles, and maybe let me back up with that too. A year ago, not this year, but the previous school year, we had all of our elementary schools carve out a morning meeting time so that they had dedicated time in their schedule, because we hear it all the time. There's no time, there's not enough time, we can't put our time into this. And we specifically had every single building, every single elementary teacher implement a morning meeting time or a classroom circle, depending on what they called it. So there was dedicated time already built into their schedules, knowing that we were going to eventually have a curriculum to bring to that time. So in December, with this committee work, we had all of our elementary counselors there, as well as a representative from every grade level. We worked together to develop that shared knowledge, a vision, a rubric, and then also explored those various resources. And then we selected 2 resources to pilot this past spring. We did a pilot from January to March, and then March to May, and then we met again in May to review that pilot. One of the things that I want to specifically just talk to here is that rubric was created by our teachers. One of the the biggest pieces of feedback and the one thing that I really wanted to take into consideration with all of this, we hear all the time that there is so much on our teachers' plates that we want to make sure it's not an add-on, that it's something that's easily implemented, that it's not a ton of prep work ahead of time. And that was really important for them to create the rubric to determine which curriculum resource would best match what our teachers need and what our students need. And the rubric is attached onto this presentation as well, but that was one of the biggest pieces that we wanted to hear what the teachers had to say about it. Along with that, Pulaski is really special in the fact that I brought together only one teacher from each grade level. They went back to their teacher teams. Every single teacher team wanted to do the pilot together. It wasn't a sole individual teacher anywhere, because they knew that it was important to have those conversations around the curriculums to determine what's going to be best fit for our staff and students. So I think that's also, that speaks to the work ethic of our teachers too. They want to do what's right and they want to do it well. So with that, I'm bringing forward to you tonight kind of our resource recommendation. So through Character Strong is the name of the organization. It's called Purposeful People, which is the elementary component. They do have a middle school and high school component, but like I said, we're currently just focusing on elementary. Some of the pieces that were, that rubric piece I have attached there or linked there as well. It's really, Purposeful People is evidence-based. It wants to support the whole child. Again, we talk about kids needing problem-solving skills, conflict resolution, empathy, trust, honesty, all of those character traits to make them better individuals and better contributing members to our society. That community piece. We're all here for all of our kids. Purposeful People also has very specific, direct skill instruction. So it's teaching the students how to go about each of these areas, what they should do. They have three main, I'm going to say, platforms of be kind, be strong, and be well. So any of the lessons then come back to those three main components to make sure that students are under one of those umbrellas. Really, ultimately, our goal with having it at the elementary level is that we bring students forward to that middle school to be kind, be strong, and be well, and to be good people throughout their middle school and high school careers as well. Some of the feedback, really, it was unanimous across the board. All of the piloting teams said Purposeful People was absolutely #1 choice. It was easy to use, the kids loved it, it was engaging, which is one of our goals for this next school year is student engagement, and that looks different across the board. It was awesome to hear stories. I had one of the teachers share with me that at parent-teacher conferences, a parent said their child was singing the song at home that was in one of the lessons, that kids, after we ended that pilot, because that was our first pilot, kids asked to have that pilot back again or to have that curriculum back again. So when you hear kids asking for it, you know that they were engaged. It was something they looked forward to. And really, I would say that the other piece of all of it is that the teachers felt like they could implement it throughout, even though there's a dedicated set amount of time, they could implement the character trait or the theme or activity throughout their entire day, throughout their week. It was something that was just done and they referenced easily throughout their course of their day's teaching. Next steps, like I said, pending board approval, we would purchase this for 3 years for 4K through 5th grade. Additionally, there is a tier 2 component. So we talk about universal, we talk about tier 2 being that next layer. And behavior is something we talk about all the time, wanting to improve, and as we shared, kind of that little nugget is one of our goals next year is specific to behavior. That tier 2 are additional lessons that we can provide to students, additional practice support to smaller groups of students that might need more specific or targeted supports. Training and professional development would start in this August. We would have someone that it would be able to come in person and work with our teachers in our August professional development and learning days. And then throughout the year, the nice thing, if we would develop or if we would implement it universally, every time throughout the school year when our grade levels teams get together, they would have universal expectations and conversations around what's going well, what are we struggling with, what do we need to change across all grade levels as well. I think that's all I have. Then questions, up for questions.
What schools and how many teachers piloted this curriculum?
Okay, so I've been making a mistake, I'm sorry. Kindergarten at Fairview, see, I'm already gonna mess it up. First grade at Lanoy, second grade at Sunnyside, third grade at Hillcrest, I already missed it up. Hillcrest was first grade, second grade Sunnyside, third grade Lanoy, fourth grade Glenbrook, thank you. Fifth grade Sunnyside, and there were at least, the only one that was a solo was Fairview, being in a single section school, but otherwise it was at least 2 to 3 team members on each of the piloting teams.
Can you speak to how, if at all, you think this will impact our struggles with classroom behaviors? We keep hearing that word.
Absolutely. So when we talk about, again, going back to, I wish we could have had one of you sit in our SAIL discussions, because this ties so directly with SAIL. As I was sitting through SAIL last week, the common behavior expectations, the common language, the universal teachings is exactly what this does. So having a curriculum or having a resource that our teachers will be presenting to students throughout the day would then be able to reference, like I said. So if you need to reteach on something, here's my way that I have something that we just talked about, let's reteach it, let's practice it, let's try it again, versus this is an incident referral. So it's not that one and done, we have opportunities to reteach. We have lessons that we can reference and reframe so that we have access to opportunities for growth. It's not a punitive approach.
If the teacher's already created something, right? And again, I haven't seen the curriculum, so I'm not trying to be sarcastic or funny. You know, if we're trying to teach saying thank you and please and all of that stuff and reacting when something happens, what would this bring that what we've already established doesn't bring? Like if we've already set a good foundation, behavior should be pretty consistent regardless of when. So what does this bring, I guess, that we don't already have?
I think when we talk about universal, so I go back to the lessons that we created. It was, like I said, again, being very transparent, a little grab and go. And if we have not used those consistently over the years, again, being very transparent. So even if we were to go back and say, these are the lessons that you're teaching each month, it's not universal across the board. So when you move from first grade to second grade, you already have the understanding of the curriculum. And I have it pulled up if you'd like to walk through a sample lesson plan, I'm happy to do that with you tonight too. I think it's that universal piece where everyone is getting the same messaging, the same understanding, similar to PBIS where we have our 3 expectations of be respectful, be responsible, and be safe. It is something that students can easily access and understand at their level that I think is that evidence-based and research-based, that they're able to see a direct impact, like you were saying, on the behavior side of it. Remember, we did this lesson. Remember about being courageous. Remember about being kind. Are you being kind? Using your words and phrases and ways to reference with the activities that they would implement.
I think another piece that's important for that universal language and very consistent language across the district is that our kids do move around buildings, right? So we do have some transfer sometimes where families move or kids ask to go to families ask for another building. So when that happens, there's consistency. And then on top of that, our teachers work together collaboratively across buildings. So it's very important that when they're collaborating and when we're getting together and doing the alignment across all different grade levels and all the second grade teachers get together from all of the buildings, they have a common language and a common vocabulary now that they're working with. So that also is very helpful for us when we're looking at data, and that also takes away some of those distractors. We learned a lot about what's a detractor and a distractor from what we really should be looking at in data. And so now when we're really narrowing things down and we're looking at how are we looking at an incident, if it really truly does become a behavior, we may be able to drill it down further and say, oh, well, when we really look at these things in the curriculum, this is something we need to work a little bit more on, and I see that you're doing this with your kids, I'm going to try that, which is what the PLC mindset is. So I think that common language is probably the largest benefit of having, a curriculum that supports the social emotional balance of our kids.
I have a statement and a question. So the statement, I want to tie a little bit off what you said. It would have been nice if somebody from here was at SAIL. I would just say this, if this has been worked on for the last 4 years, bringing information as this is going would probably eliminate a lot of the questions that we're asking tonight. So going forward, it'd be helpful to learn as we go with this thing. But second of all, how are we going to measure this? If we have these goals now that we're going to go after, and I mean, our teachers and principals have a lot of experience, right, in learning and dealing with all this stuff, and now we add this to it. How do we measure what's really moving us in a positive direction?
I think that could be those behavior incidents. Right now, we also do an Sabres and My Sabres screener, so I think that's also going to, and the 3 areas are there in that are behavior. What's the word I'm looking for? Like there's social behaviors, academic behaviors, and emotional behaviors. That's what I was looking for. So there's 3 areas in that Sabres and My Sabres screener that we utilize with our kids. So when we look at those scores specifically, we would be able to determine, okay, are our scores going down? And actually you'll probably get some of that information later on this summer too for some of our goals. So looking at with direct, explicit instruction in these areas of that academic behaviors, social behaviors, and emotional behaviors, are our students becoming more resilient? So they're scoring better on the Sabres and My Sabres as far as screening of do they need support or do they not? So I think that would be one way, as well as that behavior incident numbers could potentially go down. We talked a lot last week too at SAIL about when you get universal common language, common expectations, we're looking at implementing EduClimber and entering data referrals across the board universally the same way. You may see a spike in numbers. You may see higher numbers because we are all on the same page and we are trying to do it to fidelity. So along with that, depending on what our behavior incident numbers look like, they may go up. And that is just telling us that, okay, now we need to drill down into why are they going up and where are they going up and who are they going up with in reference to the males versus females piece too. That's some of those brutal facts, and that information is really important for us to dig deeper into and learn more about. So I would say those would be our 2 main areas of data that we would look at.
Yes, thank you. I don't remember the exact number, but in a previous board meeting, it was stated that the children spend 12% of their time in the school, something like that. You remember the number?
I don't remember the number, but yeah.
So when we talk about emotional or social emotional, how do we think their time away from school? How do we overcome anything there that may be an influence on that, when we try to use this? Whether we get parents, I don't know. I guess that's more of a curiosity question. Because if we only have 12% of their time here, and some of the things that drive them socially or emotionally are not in our buildings, how do we compete with that?
Like, is there a family or parent aspect to it? Is that kind of like where you're going to, like he said, yeah, I think that's where it's going, parent or
Kind of, yeah.
family aspect
So,
to it.
The easy answer is yes, there is a family component to it. There is like a little newsletter or blurb that would go home to families that would be specific around it. We can control what we can control within the school day. When we teach our kids and give them those skills to be resilient and make positive decisions and be contributing citizens, that's what we can control in the school, and we can hope and that also then leads into their other parts of their days, whatever that may look like. Knowing that we are a community school district, and I wish Mark Heck was still here, because I think I look at some of the PACE programming some of our kids participate in, and when we have that participation, even when I think about the high schools, I see Brooke and Matt here, when they're participating in things outside of the school day, we see the impacts of how they have learned at school impact those outside of the school day. Even though it may not be at home, it's out within our community and out and about in our area too.
We're also gonna have a lot more parent engagement opportunities for parent engagement nights coming up, and potentially some. I mean, I haven't gone through that curriculum with you, but I'm already thinking in my head, what can we pull from that and help families with? Help, my child is doing this at night, or how do I get my child to get a good night's sleep? Or there might be things that we can implement on those nights to help with that parent training piece, where we can affect things outside of school hours.
Yeah, I think the hardest part is finding where the line is, right? What the school is responsible for versus what home is responsible for. There's other agencies, family services, they offer like programs and assistance and guidance and all of that stuff too. So, okay.
I think the other piece with all of it, I think you had asked about the impact. So when we have students that are regulated and ready to learn and able to learn, their academic scores are just going to increase because they are in that state of mind that they're able to function academically and be again productive citizens in our community too, and that just ebbs and flows into all of their parts of their day.
Don't you think too, with the home thing, and I totally agree with you that we can't control it, but I've seen kids that, because they know the expectations at school, they're a totally different child at school than they are at home. Whether the home's enforcing it or not, they get to school, they know how to behave in school. This is school behavior, and we've got to reinforce that. I mean, that's where they got to learn that from us.
Laura, you had mentioned a rubric. Was that the rubric that the teachers use to evaluate purposeful people, or is that a rubric then for students to check their understanding or measure what they're getting out of it?
Great question. So that was for them to determine what pilot we were going to move forward with and bring. But when you say that, maybe I'll just hop over here, Colton. One of the pieces with purposeful people, and if I need to log back on, just let me know. Oh boy, now you're giving me the mouse that I don't know how to control. One of the pieces with purposeful people, I'll just go straight to it right away, is this exit ticket. So we talk about kids and we talk about carrying it over into other areas. So it's kind of their own like checkpoint of what did I learn from this resource? What did I learn from this lesson today? And how am I going to implement it further on? So there is a component of a checkpoint for a kid. What am I going to do with this and moving forward? So as long as I have this up, are you guys good if I go through this lesson real quick?
Please.
Okay. So this is a second grade lesson on courage. So the staff pursuit is really just kind of for the teacher and for them to think about and understand. Like I talked about, I can't do this now, sorry. So then here there's that family focus, and there is a newsletter that could be shared home with parents that they would have an understanding of exactly what is being taught. So I would say it's very transparent in that realm that it's telling you what's being shared with the student, what they're working on, the focus for those lessons. And then also this conversation starters. We talk about how, and Steve, maybe this goes back to your point of how can this carry over into our homes, and what conversations can families have at home that can relate directly back to school, that can just ebb and flow in and out of school, and to make our kids have those conversations with their parents. Oftentimes our kids, how was your day? Fine. Let's see how we can engage that conversation a little bit further. So I think these would be a nice way that they would be able to tie right into what they're learning at school.
So if we approve that, can we all agree that this is not a we can send it home, we will send it home?
If you approve that, we can make that happen. We can, we will.
We will make that happen. I just think, we're talking about home stuff, like, I don't get a lot of this great stuff, and, no, the teachers are bogged down, I get it, but like, when we try to get this behavior stuff to carry on at home and understand and align with you guys as parents, help us help you, send us this stuff.
I might ask you maybe a logistical piece. How would you want that sent to you as a parent?
However I get it, for sure.
So text.
There's a program for that. Text. Everybody text, email.
I know, and I ask that specifically because I hear both ends of the spectrum of, oh my gosh, I get so many emails from the school district, oh my gosh, I get so many skylights. I want to hear, and maybe that's something that we could reach out to families and just ask, what's the best way to receive information like this that, so that you're aware that these are the things that we're talking about, these are things that you can talk about with your child. Keep that in your mind though, I do want to hear if you have other, so text, email.
What, not the backpack.
Not the backpack.
Not the backpack.
Especially the younger kids, not the backpack.
Yeah, it's not the backpack.
I mean, if you're looking at like
Worse with the
a
older
grade and
kids.
under, it's probably not coming home in a full piece of paper.
No.
So on the responsibility lesson, we will send it home with
There
that.
you go.
Right.
So if we have kids at the far left, in the middle, and the far right, right? So they already get this, and then those that are, and then those that don't. How, in the pilot you guys ran, the kids that already got this, how did they respond? Were they engaged?
I'll be complete, because I went and visited classrooms. I wanted to see it in action because I can hear everything from the teachers. They can tell me whatever. They can fill out the rubric and they can have their ratings and all that. All kids were engaged. All kids, no matter where they fell on that spectrum, I would say every kid in every classroom that I visited during these pilots was engaged when it was these lessons. And I think because it has kind of the different components, and I'll come back to that, but it has just kind of a quick little starter question, like think of a time that you showed courage, something to just kind of get them starting to think about it. Then it has some sort of connection activity. How can they, and this builds the relationships with the kids, student to student. And then it gets into more of what the lesson is. This one, again, is Gallery of Courage. So it talks about, it gives scenarios, and I won't go through all of them, but gives different scenarios and how would you show courage? What would you do? How would you respond? Different things that kids could talk about with one another, and then kind of have a question that they could ask of one another and then have their partner respond. Along with that, then there's, in the younger grades, there's always a song, and as silly as, and it was interesting because the younger grades all said their kids loved the songs. And you sometimes wonder, like, is it gonna get old? And they said, nope, it didn't get old. The kids just loved it because it was different with each theme. So again, that engagement piece was huge, and that is, like I said earlier, with our professional development and learning calendar, student engagement across the board is something we are working on. We know that that's what we have to make sure we continue to do so that it directly impacts their academic scores. So then, along with that, then there's that exit ticket like reflection moving forward, as well as additional, let's say that you wanna dig deeper. They always give some sort of book or some other activity that the kids could do to continue on that realm.
So what grade level is this one?
This one is second grade.
What does fifth grade look? And you don't have to show me, but I mean, how does it, like, what's the spectrum to go to fifth grade?
Yeah, I think the only other one that they have is a fourth grade sample that I could just show you real briefly. And there's still information in here. I would say it's probably not as little kiddish, even though it may look that way. It's this one is about reflection and thinking about negative talk to positive self-talk. So thinking about how you can reframe some of your thoughts. So I would say, and this one talks about a mindful moment. So how can you breathe? How can you, strategies and things that you can use when you're stuck on something and you're feeling that negative self-talk.
And we expect each teacher across all the grades to be able to deliver and maintain this curriculum with each of our students.
I confidently believe that they are able to do that.
I'm not judging their capabilities, but it's a lot to ask, I think, of a teacher.
So you had it in your school? Let's
Yep,
talk about
Sam was, I guess, our lead teacher for fourth grade. It actually, was still paying attention, but I was whispering to Brooke, and I just said how when Purposeful People came, like that was discussed during our coalition meetings, we actually used whatever lessons Purposeful People was working on in fourth grade. We used that to frame kind of our teachers had asked. You know, it helps when we have a focus for like our PBIS. We used to do pride forms, and then we redid how that looks, and teachers were like, it'd be like, we like having like a monthly focus, like this month, let's really focus on being kind, or let's really focus on doing whatever. We got together with Sam and Rachel up in 4th grade, and they communicated to us what the skills were. So it made its way to the coalition, which then tied into our PBIS, which then tied on into our SIT meetings that we have with ODRs and Candace, our counselor. Again, to me what it does is, I referenced it earlier, but it's like everybody's in the same boat. We're all rowing in the same direction, rather than this teacher has a knack for doing this, but the rest of the kids at that grade level don't experience that. So Allie referenced a book earlier with coherence, and it just does, like we talk a lot about that at a bigger building like Glenbrook, about making sure that everybody has clarity on what we're doing, and if we're clear about what we're doing, it seems to get done a whole lot better, a whole lot more efficient. So our teachers last year carved out times. Most of them did some stuff in the morning, some do kind of a split, a way to start the day and a way to like wrap up the day. But I had heard as well, and I think Laura spoke to it, regarding you might kick off your day, but there might be time during the day where you can infuse the key points of the lessons too. So
I think it's important to remember too, like across the elementary schools with their guiding coalition, it's also our specialist teachers. So this also is, language is just immersed and it moves into all areas of the district. So, and they're constantly talking too, and they also have their collaborative team. So when they're meeting and talking, you know, when PE and music and art are talking together, they also make plans for how they're meeting the needs of our kids socially and emotionally. So they're also, it's not like this, oh, we've got to do SEL right now, you know, in the classroom. It isn't like that. It's very natural. And if we put a name to it or we don't, our teachers are teachers, and they're talking with kids 10 minutes in the morning, and they're talking with kids 10 minutes in the middle of the day, and they're talking with kids 10 minutes at the end of the day, because that's how they're impacting our kids. And one of the things that, you know, I have said to Lara and Julie is, if we don't have consistent language and a framework or lessons to lean on as we go through with our kids, this is giving our teachers the opportunity to have something to lean on, instead of, if they don't and something comes up in their room and now they've got the situation, they're still going to take care of our kids, because our teachers are our teachers and they're wonderful. So they're still going to connect with that student, but now they don't have something to lean on. And so now they're just going to go investigate something on their own, and that sometimes can be kind of loose, and then that sometimes is worrisome for our building leaders, like, oh, I don't know if we should be using that in the classroom. So it's also good, it's wonderful when the whole building, and then we have the luxury of having 5 elementary schools, all 5 of the schools are using the same language and the same pieces to converse about and talk about. So I just think that that's a large strength when you bring something in that's universal.
I wish I had more time to dig into what you sent yesterday. I was pretty busy last night, didn't get up till 9, but I really wish I could have dug into, you know, actually seen like more of the curriculum, like what are the questions being asked, because like you said, you know, SEL is a buzzword, kind of controversial if you don't know what you're looking at. And I guess what would make me feel better as a parent and board member is just seeing what language they are using in here, and then I know what I'm, you know, if I would approve, that I know what I'm approving exactly, that they're not using any crazy language or, you know, doing a story that maybe I wouldn't feel is appropriate, or, you know, whatever, because again, buzzword kind of thing, and we've not had an SEL like curriculum before, is that right? Like this would kind of be the first?
Well,
that was purchased, or?
That was purchased because I actually had my admin assistant go into our health curriculum, because one of the strands was social and emotional learning, and that curriculum probably, that was teacher developed, and so they might have picked a book that they thought, you know, did something on being kind. So that's probably been in there for about 15 years in our curriculum mapping system. But I think it goes back to, it wasn't consistently delivered. And even when we were meeting with the teachers, they're like, yeah, I forgot that that's in there. And so we've actually hit that strand now, because if we were going to have a consistent curriculum where it's common language, common lesson plans, it would be better than than our self-created one.
So you guys know exactly what she's talking about. Is there anything in this curriculum that's going to make this community's eyebrows go up? You've looked at it all. Is there anything?
I do not believe so. I can say that confidently that there would not be anything in Purposeful People that would make.
And that's a very large trust factor on our staff when they're in the rooms working, because they know they're also our community members, right? And they're also parents, and they're working with our kids, and they're delivering the lessons, and they're looking at that, and they're like, oh, this doesn't fit. So I think whenever we're looking at any kind of curriculum, we're very sensitive to the fact that where we live, what our families will embrace, what they won't embrace, what they're talking about, what feedback do they need, what questions do we need to ask. I asked that very same question to Lara. I was like, is there anything in this, before we even brought this forward, and I knew everyone was like, right away, the minute this launched and went out to the teachers, we were hearing the buzz about how much they liked it. And that tells you right there that they were thankful that finally they have something that they're not having to go out and create or bring big teams together to create and then roll out to a staff, because it was here. And she's confidently, and Julie has as well, this is a,
It's an
very
evidence-based
moderate.
practice.
Go ahead, Julie.
It's an evidence-based practice. It's been rooted in research and has shown to be effective. I think that our students would really benefit from the perspective of what it's going to be teaching these skills to be skill specific. A lot of times it's really difficult if we talk about behavior for students experiencing challenges, and we're not getting to the root of the challenge, and we don't have the resources to be able to do that in the classroom setting, for example. It's really hard, because then we're relying on people outside of the classroom, other educators who aren't in with the kids every single day to reinforce. I mean, every time we see something like that, when we get a student doing what we expect them to do, we want to reinforce it. As we want the teachers to have the skills and the knowledge base to do that using an evidence-based practice like something like this.
So does this have to be approved tonight in order to meet the goal that you have? I'm assuming you're starting at you're asking to start at this coming fall?
Yes.
So is tonight the night that it would have to be approved in order for that to happen?
You said August, you were starting
So
something.
I would like to lock in professional development and learning for August as soon as possible, because we would have someone coming in person. So
As far as, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. And you're asking specifically for Purposeful People to be approved?
correct.
Nothing else outside within the SEL realm?
Correct.
Okay, go ahead, Barb, sorry.
I was gonna say too, the concerns about wording or topics, every piece of our curriculum is available for parents to critique. And they can choose to not have their children take part in it, right? If there's a certain lesson.
And
I
this
mean,
will be
that's
just like
district
all of our
practice.
other curriculum.
Just
will be
like everything
it's
else.
available. There's a specific scope and sequence that's really easy to review and see if there's topics that would be uncomfortable for somebody. But generally, I mean, just in reviewing them, there's nothing that stands out.
Curtis, do you feel like this is a tool that will help behaviors? Oh wow, who are we looking for?
Elementary reps.
So this is mass behavior.
Yes.
You're speaking for them all right now.
Yeah, here you
Yeah,
are.
like I said, Sam and Rachel were the two fourth grade teachers that I talked to the most about it, and they had very busy days too. Did not hear any complaints about, how it was implemented, that they felt like it, fit in good, fit in nice spots throughout their day. Again, for me, just with Glenbrook did a behavior book study last year, and one of the biggest things that we got out of that behavior book study, like Jenny referenced, like with our specialists, every single teacher in our building has the exact same rules and the exact same steps for what we would call consequences. And we heard time and time again from our teachers at coalition meetings and staff meetings about how powerful that was, that everything was consistent no matter where a child went. We referenced it earlier about, home versus school. We have that structure here, and that every teacher will tell you that those days that you are off your structure, whether that be a field trip, a concert, it's supposed to be a fun day, a field day, that's oftentimes when we see things kind of spike because they're out of that structure. So the more we can be consistent across grade levels, across schools, I really believe it's beneficial.
Well, I mean, I think as long as we're teaching kids how to be polite and all that stuff using general terms and not using terms and words or actions that could cause division or hate or any other things, I think is gonna be the key message here, and I think everybody understands that.
I appreciate the kind of, I'm gonna say, direct questions and kind of getting to the bottom line. And again, I can confidently say that this would be a huge benefit for our students as well as our staff, and would not have any of those pieces that would create divisions.
What other options did we have for the SEL curriculums?
So we So we, when we originally looked, do you want names of curriculum?
I'm curious because I don't support Castle, as you know, so there had to be other options.
So we had looked at actually Second Step, which was another evidence-based curriculum, Random Acts of Kindness, which was a free curriculum, which is why we looked at it, and then HMH also has an SEL component that, which is our literacy curriculum, and this was, again, by far the teacher's top choice across the board when we looked at the other, just kind of previewing the curriculums, and then when implementing this one, hands down top choice for all of our teachers. Truly, for ease of access, for the usability, for the engagement with the students, across the board, all of our kindergarten through fifth grade teachers that participated said this was hands down their choice. So
there's no way we could, like Allison said, self-create something like this that goes universally across our schools, a consistent message that's something we can create with all of our own administrators? Is that not something we could consider?
Well, it is something to consider, but it would be very much, it would be very similar to how we used to do policy creation here in the district, where we kind of looked at what everyone else was using, and then we would kind of have Neola's policy without really having Neola policy. We could do that, but then that also would be, you want to talk about adding something to teachers' platters, then you're bringing in large teams from every school, every grade level to have a time where they're creating, where they're most likely going to go out and follow the framework of social emotional learning and build lessons that are either canned and prepared online. And I just don't know if that would bring the consistency. I think there would be a lot more questioning of what we were doing as opposed to using an evidence-based practice. And you two,
yeah.
speak
And
to that.
one thing too, just to kind of reference that as well, we talk about what others are doing. So one of the things at the very beginning is I asked other Brown County directors, student services directors, what curriculums and resources are you using? And this one came up with, as well as the other ones that I had mentioned. So almost all of them are using some sort of a resource or a curriculum specifically. I would say there's maybe one or two that did the self-created lessons. When we talk about consistency and structure, and again, ease for the teachers, I think that's where coming forward with a curriculum is the benefit.
From a cost perspective, I can't imagine you could create something like this for $60,000 that would have this staff in it.
No. I don't think so.
And it's
Right.
The technology.
You have to
concerned.
participate.
It's interactive. We would have to create, this would take an extreme amount of time to be able to put together.
I think the biggest thing is being able to contain what we're approving to what we've seen and the specific thing. And then I'm curious, whenever you get something going, what's it doing? What are parents saying to us about it? What are the teachers saying? I know you have a small population of teachers, but what are the rest of them saying? What are the kids saying? Let's ask them what they're saying about it. So
We could survey that
And
a year
then
down the road.
Sorry. About the $66,000, so you wanna talk about that budget-wise, what we're looking at?
Yeah, so in the last state budget, there was a focus on mental health, which would cover it. There's categorical aid. We have one more year of it. Chances are that funding will be reduced, as it was kind of just a one-time categorical aid that they're looking at. They didn't put it in long term. So that's where the funding is coming from.
Okay, so that's covered through that for this 3 years, and then when 3 years expires, then we just have to look at what would probably be available at that time, depending on state and stuff.
And that's why it's a larger number initially to the 65,000 versus year by year would be a smaller number, but
just to be clear, we are already offering a form of SEL training today. This would be to formalize it with curriculum.
That was
Can I ask,
something.
Laura,
Yeah.
can I ask just a quick question?
Okay.
And maybe this will help some of the concerns, and Curtis, you might know the answer. With the amount of piloting that went on, were there any parent concerns that were brought to you guys at all?
Parents know.
Well, I think their kids would probably tell them, but.
Yeah, no concern. The only parent feedback or the parent feedback that I got was that kids were bringing some of the songs or the words and phrases home to their parents, and that was shared with teachers then too.
Can I make the motion that we approve this? I think that's always open for more discussion.
Absolutely, got a motion?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any other conversation?
I just want to say thank you for the presentation. Being that it's aligned with Castle, I can support it.
In line with what?
Castle.
Isn't that like the standards?
The core competencies, yes. It stands for Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. It's a very broad design in which those standards or those competencies for social emotional learning were developed, and all these different states across the country reference the CASEL standards. So when we say CASEL, that's kind of the acronym for it, I guess. But really the targeted areas that CASEL, the core competencies cover, are self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. So those are the 5 areas that they're going to key in on. But again, that has caused some challenges amongst many folks just because of some political things that have happened over the years with it. But ultimately their goal is to promote academic performance, mental health, and interpersonal skills. So the foundation of the work is really good. And there is a prong of the CASEL work that has become transformative. So it's transformative social emotional learning that focuses a lot on equity and race and justice and those types of things. That's not what we're bringing here tonight. We're bringing SEL from a non-transformative perspective. We want all kids to learn skills, to develop skills, and we want all people to be good people and to support each other and give them those competencies that they can carry over into their lives. So that's kind of, I think, the reference that Dennis is talking about. I don't know if you want to elaborate on your concern.
No, I'm all for emotionally controlling these kids and making them more ready to learn. I'm all for that. I'm just opposed to the political aspect of Castle. So that's just my opinion.
That was a good explanation. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I would be interested though, so Barb had mentioned that, parents can always opt out. If we have parents starting to opt out, I'd be curious to hear about that and why, right? Because if it's as broad as we say it is, again, then I would see no reason why a parent would opt out. Again, but if there's something, I'd like to hear about it.
I think one of the things after going through this whole process, and I genuinely appreciate your feedback, so continue to give that as well, is getting my SEL team together again, maybe after first semester and then at the end of the year, and just see my core team, I'll call them, and see how it's gone, and maybe look for that as far as you had mentioned a survey. Let's get some feedback from our parents. How is it going? And then that will then directly tie into our behavior. I'm going to say it will tie into our behavior incidents. It will tie into our Sabres and MySabres data. So I think there'll be multiple data points that we can bring a year from now to show what growth this has done for our kids.
And like, the PDF, that would be sent out to the parents.
Yep.
I know that it is a struggle. Some hate the emails, some want the paper, some don't. Open house, conferences, the engagement nights, things like that, incorporating it. I think in all of those, just putting it in the parent's mind, like, we have this, we're working on this, we're proud of this, kind of thing. Just every time that parents in the building, let's bring it up. Let's, maybe send them with something or not if they prefer emails, just find out what that preference is, because I think if we, at home can help things improve at school as well.
You got my wheels turning with some of my action steps with my counselors and how they can be involved and be directly impacting our families through some of those engagement pieces as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Anybody else want to talk? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
No. Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
All right, next we are going to dive into policies.
So the first policy that we have is on class rank, and I linked this policy for you in my update so that it was easy for you to access. So if you go to my update that I sent you on Friday, you'll be able to just hit the link there for 5430. And this is on class rank in Act 95. So I'm going to have Matt and Jenny just kick this off and talk a little bit about where this policy lands and the need and the why behind it.
So I'll talk policy and he can talk Act 95.
Allison, resend that real quick.
Okay.
If you go on your drafts, the very first tab is 5,000 student. If I click on that, it's your first thing under there.
Under Neola.
Yep, in board docs, drafts.
I'll also forward you my document.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Sorry, Dana.
None of us can find that email, it's a thing.
I'm serious.
I have the update email, but it's not linked in there.
Yeah.
The link,
Isn't
I don't
that
think the link
crazy?
worked.
Really?
That's why I called you earlier.
I swear, after we, turn our iPads in and then we get them back,
Oh, yeah.
it's
The
wonky.
settings are all
It's
changed,
all, it's switched to everything we
They're blaming
asked you to
IT.
switch. I'm not, my incompetence.
I didn't have any
basically.
I think the
Other than
drafts
Word.
are hidden on this program. If I was gonna critique that program, I think the drafts are hidden. Cause you gotta double click after you open it once or something goofy like that.
Right, I had to go in the settings and do something, because if you replied to it, there was like an extension to an email, it didn't show anymore.
So originally, when we went with Neola, we did not take the class rank policy, and it's because we weren't class ranking. As you might remember from several years ago, a committee came forward after a year of reviewing, after meeting with parents, involving students on the committee as well, and had opted that we weren't going to do class rank. And there were several reasons to it. The main reason was that a top 10% in our district is not necessarily the top 10% in a different district. And we were able to show that data as a comparison of Howard Swamico. And so some of their kids were having lower GPAs, but it was helping them to get into colleges like Madison. And so we went away from that because we wanted our kids to have the same advantage. We had talked to multiple universities. We looked at where all of our kids were going, and we split up all of those places, and the committee did, and we called those places, had a set amount of questions, and so we moved away from class rank. That's why we didn't take this policy. However, Act 95 came about, which Matt will talk a little bit more about, and then our Neola rep said, now you're going to have to take this policy, and so then he put it into the mix. We met, and I think it even is on here for May 13th, and we made the revisions for class rank. Policy, you guys have it, 5430.
Thank you for resending.
Did you get it?
I got
Were you
the
able to
email,
open
but I
it?
still didn't open it.
So this is, after we met and we talked about what we use and how we use it, this is the policy that we took some parts of it and we didn't take other parts. We made a change because we don't do weighted grades. We have what's called index grading. It's a little bit different than what some other high schools do. It's that .025 that gets added on each semester if you take certain classes that are on the list. It's like AP classes. It might be some of our NWTC articulated courses like our anatomy courses, and some of our project lead the way, which can get college credit. So those are just the slight things to meet our criteria, so that's why you'll see some of it in green. Matt can talk about Act 95, which actually drove this and brought class rank back into the limelight. So.
Okay, excellent. So I know we've got a lengthy agenda, so I'm going to try to keep this kind of brief, but if you bear with me for a few minutes, I first want to preface my comments by saying we support whatever route students want to take in their postgraduate pursuits. We talked last month about the military. We know we have a record number of students that are going to be in youth apprenticeship next year. Some of our kids are going to trade schools. Some of our kids are going to 2-year schools. Some are just school to work outside of youth apprenticeship. Some are going to 4-year colleges or universities. And we support all of those students, whatever pursuits they're going to go. The information tonight is relative to 4-year colleges, specifically the UW system. I just want to kind of reactivate prior knowledge that earlier in the year, you may have heard about the initiative that the UW system rolled out called Direct Admit Wisconsin. And so this is a way for high school students, we chose to be a participating high school in this. So we gave our families an opt-out option. So if you don't want your students' information shared with UW system, let us know that, and that won't be. If you choose to be in, then that information will get shared, and your student will get notified if they meet criteria to be accepted to UWGB, to UW Milwaukee, Oshkosh, Parkside, Platteville, River Falls, Stevens Point, Stout, Superior, and Whitewater. So this was an initiative that rolled out earlier in the year. I personally, and I know people have different viewpoints on this, I choose to look at both of these things as positive for our kids. And so that's Direct Admit Wisconsin. I share that because Act 95 has become referred to as the guaranteed admission law. So direct admit, guaranteed admission, okay? So Act 95 actually is a law now, and it establishes the following things. And that list I read did not have UW-Madison as part of the direct admit. UW-Madison comes in under the Act 95. So I will say it is a law, and there's that legalese language where you can look at the statutory language if you'd like. As Jenny said, our attorney shared information. There are entities like WASB or WASBA, however you want to pronounce that give policy perspectives to try to make this language more understandable for everyone. So I'm going to just share some information from that. But essentially, this says the UW system must admit an applicant from a public high school system to the system institution of the applicant's choice if the applicant is ranked in the top 10% of the applicant's high school class. As a special exception, an applicant to the University of Wisconsin-Madison is guaranteed admission only if the applicant is ranked in the top 5% of the applicant's high school class. So for those things to be determined, some things have to happen, and because this is a law, some of those other things are now incumbent on us to do. And so I'm going to share those. For each public high school that includes grades 11 and 12, the school must, quote, prepare a class ranking of pupils enrolled in the high school as of the class's completion of grade 11. Okay, provided that there are at least 15 pupils in the class, and that starts with this year's incoming seniors. So we do have that list of class rank. It does say the ranking must identify those pupils who rank in the top 5% and top % of their class. Schools must rank pupils on the basis of academic achievement, and the sole criterion for the ranking must be the pupil's GPA. Okay, so we don't have a choice on how we want to rank kids, it's just solely by the GPA. The school district is required to notify each qualifying pupil that the pupil is ranked as applicable in the top 5% or 10% of their high school class. So I have a letter, a draft I wrote, trying to convey information to families. District offices taking a look at this, our school counselors have taken a look at this, and Ms. Lynch helped me to reformat this so it might be just even more accessible to our families that are receiving this. So it's just got some information about what's new, what does this mean, how does this relate to my child, and our administrative assistants did a great job with a mail merge. So they've got those students on that list, the students who are either in the top 5% or top 10%. It has filled in the student's name and then which percentage, 5 or 10, corresponds to that student. And then how do I get more information about this? So this letter is ready to go out. If the board approves the policy tonight, it'll get sent out tomorrow. Those families should receive this letter then on Friday, hopefully. And so the only other piece, I need to continue on with this. So the school district is required to notify each qualifying pupil, so that's that letter. The last piece is that the fact of a top 5% or top 10% ranking as of the completion of grade 11 must be included on each qualifying pupil's high school transcript. So previously, when the district did have class rank, it was just like, you know, 1 of X, right, or 44 of X, or whatever it might have been. What this is saying is, you don't have to put the class rank on every student's transcript. And it's not saying for the top 5 or top 10% that you have to put their actual rank. It's saying that you have to, on that student's transcript, identify that student as being in either the top 5% or the top 10%. And so we're working to finalize that language that will appear on those transcripts for those kids meeting that criteria. And I'm anticipating that that will be done by the end of the week or early next week. So that's where we're at with this. We're ready to roll. And you know, I will say this policy's perspective stresses the point that it's important to get this done as soon as possible for those students that are going to be seniors that are doing the early admission process, so that they have their transcripts available to share.
So Matt, does the state doesn't determine though how you determine the GPA?
That's correct. What they did
So they're not really
decide is
getting
that
all the
that's our
schools on the
sole
same page.
criterion. So like for Jenny's, like when Jenny shared the policy there where it says index grades,
Yeah.
like that's something where we have that autonomy to do that. And we can make our GPA based on index grades. So, but they did say in the statutory language that the sole criterion is GPA.
Okay.
They don't tell us how to calculate a GPA. They just establish that the sole criterion is the GPA.
Interesting enough, admissions at the college level, they will tell you that they peel back and they take off the weighted grades and the index grades, and they just go with the straight, like you got an A in, you know, to figure out the GPA, and it's just the way it is. And we explain that to parents, like even if we didn't have index grading or you didn't have weighted grading, and to get into a college, they're not going to look at your 4.15. They're peeling it back to say, no, you really have a 4.0 or you have a 3.8, you know, whatever it might be. So
And our school counselors did let us know that they've been receiving questions already from families because word is out about Act 95, and so, you know, we definitely want to get this information out to those families.
So again, Matt, you're just saying the top, whatever percent is the group that will identify, not everybody,
Correct.
right? Okay.
Yeah, so approving this policy essentially just provides that foundation for the district to say, hey, we have a class rank, and what, as Jenny said, what's driving this? Act 95.
Alright, well, I'd like to do a motion to approve policy 5430 as presented.
I'll second it.
A motion and a second, any other conversation? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
All right, now we're gonna review some policies that we had out there before.
Correct, so this is 7440 and 7554. And I had sent you information a while back from Tim Bannock about 7440 because there was some concern about having the word change from may to shall. And so Neola actually did that word change and moved it to shall. And as he was talking with others, so that policy, if you accept tonight, now does have, the wording is appropriate authority shall be contacted in case of serious offenses.
Good.
Okay, so that should be cleared up, and you had said that cleared that up for you. So that was 7440, so as we're doing this, I'm also framing the email for Dana so she knows which ones go to approval to send to production, that sort of thing. So if that one, I don't know if you want to individually approve
Let's
these
just
or.
approve it as we go.
Okay.
Let's do it. We need a
Make a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve policy 7440 as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any conversation on that one? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. 7544.
7544, that was the policy on social media, and I'm only hesitating because Ally Chess and I also worked on this policy because it's referenced in 3312?
3213.
3213. So it's referenced in item J of 3213, if you have your platform open, which states, in policy 3213, student supervision and welfare, that's that policy. Item J refers to policy 7554. And this was about, I think that the concerns, and Steve, you had raised some concerns about why are we not listing what's not appropriate, or what, why can't we lock that in so that there's no wiggle room? And this policy 3213 covers us because it's about our student supervision and welfare, knowing that on that side of it, they also have the understanding that that's not an appropriate or not a district approved site for them to be on or to be utilizing.
Yeah, the concern I had was it states in policy 7544 that staff is not allowed to contact individual students with on district approved platforms. And I'm suggesting that we should make it clear, even if it's not district approved, you still can't do it. And now I'm looking at on item number 12, and I don't agree with the word discouraged in there. It should be forbidden.
Right.
No staff members should be contacting students individually for any purpose, right? I understand the whole extracurricular thing, but that's all managed, right, through our sports policies and all that. But somebody reaching out to ask a student how they're doing is inappropriate, regardless of whether the district approves the use of Facebook or they say you can't use Twitter. So I just think there needs to be clarity in there to forbid it, period.
So I think it's two different buckets. So let me read to 3213J. This is the blanket statement that protects all social media, whether it's district approved or not. So
But it's the discouraged, that's what he's talking about. The word discouraged is the word
Leaves the door open.
That's the, I mean, that's not going to protect us from anything. Discouraged, we would prefer you not, but if you do, we don't have a policy that says you can't.
So I agree. So it says discouraged. It should be or forbidden, whatever word we want to use, from engaging students in social media, online network, except for appropriate academic extracurricular. So I mean that's okay. But again, if you're discouraging, you're saying, well, we don't really want you to, but, and it just leaves that door open. And then that satisfies 7544 though too. Because I think what 7544 is really intended to be related to is the school district Facebook site, right? Like me having access to the site and communicating with students individually. And there's more stuff in there, but this one here makes it clear cut, other than that one single word that.
So this leaves us at a place where 7444 is okay. This brings up 3213 as the issue now.
I think
Right?
part of it is we as a district, we can only control what happens in the confines of the school. We don't have power over staff in their personal life. So part of it, like if you look further in 3213.
I disagree.
With F.
If we have a staff member.
If it's a family relationship, so if we have
That's different. That's different. I know, Mark. We've talked about certain things, but we do have control over that. If staff members are violating this policy, doing things on school property or off school property, it's still a staff-student relationship that's being violated. We're not talking about parental stuff here. This leaves the door open for appropriate academic, extracurricular, and professional use only. So we do.
We're saying then, like, if, let's say I have a niece that's in the district and I want to send her a Facebook message, then I couldn't do that on my own time? So I think that's why she's saying discouraged over forbidden.
Well, but then she said F covers it. This provision should not be construed as precluding a professional staff member from associating with students in private for legitimate or proper reasons to interfere with familiar relationships that may exist between staff and students. So it's covered in there. So I don't see any reason why we can't close the door on J. Like that's where it's
I
in.
think we would want to get some legal counsel on that with Neola, or our own legal counsel to make sure that we can use forbidden versus discouraged.
Or not allowed, some form of
Yeah.
that word.
A more discouraging word than
discouraged.
discouraged.
Okay, so So we can't work on 3213 tonight because it is not listed on our.
Absolutely.
So we will need to bring that back.
Got it.
another
7544 too then, right? I think they go together.
And that leaves 7544 still
Don't
out
leave
there.
that open then.
I think so.
You don't wanna approve that, knowing we're gonna work on the one that is the issue.
No, because if we get legal advice back and we decide to accept it as a board,
Okay,
then we may have to still work on
Excellent.
7544.
okay,
So.
fair enough. Unless somebody wants to make a motion on that tonight.
Do we have to make a motion to table it or
Uh-oh, Jenny.
Postpone to the next meeting.
postpone to the next meeting? I'm sorry.
So do we have to do a motion to postpone to the next meeting?
No, only if you're gonna table it.
So
We're gonna
postpone is the
postpone it.
word we're using.
Alright, is everybody okay with that?
Postponing
Yes.
to use the word discourage.
Yes.
Well, and I think this is a good time just to have this conversation about policy. So, and these are the things that are going to happen with it. And it's not a discouragement because this is your job to work on policy. It's not a discouragement for you to work on policy and want to talk and discuss them. That's healthy as a board. But it is a long process and it has to be a lot of back and forth. And we never want to compromise the integrity of these policies that are put together. So that's why it could be several times that we need to look at policy. So just, you have to be understanding of that. And I do think that, we want to also be careful that we don't take every one of our meetings and have 10 policies within it as our policy work. So we're gonna wanna have a smoother process for that as well. So we can talk about that later, but it's good conversation, and I just think that, we need to know that there could be some back and forth with this. The next one is the update on Title IX. So this, we are not asking for approval, we just want to let you know that Title IX has changed at the federal level, and it will be enforced August 1st. So what's going to happen for us is that we need to get training because the changes within Title IX are that extensive. So we actually have Julie and Allie and Mark Logan going to a training at CISA 7, July 8th and 9th. And then we will be bringing this policy to you on the 17th. And as soon as they're done with the training, we're gonna wanna make sure that you guys have access to what this template looks like immediately. But you gotta give us until we go to the training to see what this all entails. So you probably do hear a lot of buzz out there about Title IX right now. So Julie and Allie, we've already done one meeting with Neola to just kind of get us ready for that. So I don't know if you want, Julie, you said you were gonna handle a little bit of the conversation tonight around Title IX.
Yeah, so Title IX, again, April 19th was the date that the federal government instituted these new regulations. It's very comprehensive. So in 2020, there was an initial change to the Title IX rules, and it really did provide a lot more detail in regards to what was utilized as far as a process when people complained about sex discrimination in particular. There's a very, very methodical approach that we need to do to investigate and ensure that all of the factors are being considered when somebody does have a concern or makes a complaint in that manner. So essentially, sex-based discrimination was the 2020 focus, and now in this new revision or this new law, they're really focusing on it's more extensive. So it covers not only sex discrimination, sex-based harassment, but also unequal athletic opportunities, admissions discrimination, discrimination in courses or academic programs, like excluding certain classes based on their sex. It also includes pregnancy discrimination that was not part of the law before, unequal treatment based on parental, family, or marital status, discrimination in employment, hiring, promotion, compensation, and retaliation. So these changes are very, very comprehensive. They did include both students and adults before in the rules. Now it's just going to be a lot more detail as how we respond when there are complaints. Before, the complaints had to be written. Now they can be oral or written. So we need to have a process in which we're going to respond to that. So you'll get a lot more detail on that in this next revision to the policy that we want to bring forward at the next meeting after we get our training. So that's just a little tidbit of information that we have right now. We are going to have to operate with both policies, the 2020 version and the 2024 version, for a period of time, because if there's a complaint that occurs between now in August 1st or something that is made from January. So we have to revise the 2020 and then look at the 2024 and operate it with both for a little while yet. So pretty complex, but very important that we follow the procedures.
Thank you. Any questions for at this point?
When is the training at CISA
The 8th and 9th,
of July? Is it
Yes, July.
both 2 days of training or
2 days.
either or?
It's about a day and a half. So Allie and Mark and I will be there. So we're primarily working on the Title IX as the officers of that program. It's my job.
Looks long.
All right, excellent, thank you for the update. Next is a handful of policies that the board would like to discuss. If you have board docs open, policy 0166. So what's been proposed here is really just that first line, I believe. And whoever said that one, sent me that one, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what we're looking for here is the first line to say the district administrator and board president shall prepare and make available, mail or deliver each board member an agenda prior to each meeting. So I think just assuring the board president and the superintendent work together on the agenda. I think it's current practice and we're just looking for our policy to reflect that.
What happens if the president can't do it?
I would say then it would be the board, the vice president and
That's in policy right now. As the vice president, you would step in for the president if they're not there. So that's already a policy as like the backup if the president's not available.
How about the district administrator and board president shall collaborate to prepare?
Sure. Good with that? Allison's typing frantically. So, and I think you want to collect this information tonight and then make sure that it's vetted and then bring it back to us to vote, but we won't vote tonight, is that how I understood it?
I think that would be the best route to go, just have discussion and then I can just make sure that Neola is good with this and then we can move from there, so. And then that should be like, I can rename that, Jen, we can work on that together about renaming this batch of reviewed policies that, went through, because we'll have to move these policies into draft. We'll have to have, work on them, make sure that Neola's, the integrity of them is okay, and then we can bring it back here so that you guys can just approve it in a batch.
Yes, good.
Does that make sense?
Sure.
Yeah, that's good. All right, any other changes to that policy or is that what we're looking for? All right, next policy, let's look at 3112 and 4112. Both of those policies, what we're looking at doing is striking a line in those policies. Let me pull up 3112. So the 3000s and the 4000s is really just differentiated by hourly versus contracted staff. Is that correct?
Correct. Professional staff versus support staff.
Okay, gotcha. So we are looking at first paragraph of that policy, both of those policies. The verbiage is failure to do so may result in employee discipline. So what we're talking about there is communication with the board. And the proposals coming from the interpretation that line leads to staff not reporting concerns to the board due to essentially fear of retaliation. This will give, I guess, the district an open door policy in line with just about every other organization in the world right now. That whatever level of the organization you feel most comfortable going to, that you can do that safely without fear of retaliation. Of course, as a board, it's our responsibility to encourage the use of the chain of command, but I think that there are instances where that chain of command maybe isn't the safest or best route for our staff. So we are looking to strike that line in 3112 and 4112.
The whole line?
That failure to do so may result in employee discipline, that line.
So ultimately, I sent this. So I have, all staff should be encouraged to follow the chain of command whenever possible. However, the board should believe in having an open door philosophy, and all staff members where all staff members are welcome to interact with all levels of leadership, including the board, without fear of retaliation or discipline. So that was my purpose for sending these policies.
Okay, yeah, gotta be written real careful because whatever they're talking about could result in discipline. It's just the fact that they talk to a board member is not being disciplined.
I don't think
Well, what this is talking about
You know what
is
I'm
chain
saying?
of command. So this is threatening employee discipline for not following the established chain of communication as described in this policy.
I understand that, that's why I'm saying if we change the wording, you have to be careful how you word it. And you can't say there won't be any discipline, because if the event itself may cause discipline, not the talking to the board member.
Right, but there's other policies that should cover that.
Yeah,
Right.
I just,
Yeah.
yeah.
just making a
I
point
agree.
here.
No, yeah.
I agree with you, but there are other policies that should cover
Yeah, this
that,
is just the
that-
physical
whatever that
communication.
Yeah.
might be.
So how would I'm just curious now, so how would a problem get solved if an employee didn't go, I'll use a teacher for example, if a teacher didn't go to a principal and instead went directly to a board member, we can't really do anything to fix that problem. So I guess I'm just curious how that would look then. How would anything get done?
Well, I think that's a conversation that happens, but I guess if one of Curtis's teachers comes to me because she feels intimidated by Curtis, then it's my job to get Allison involved and her to take over, but I'm who she felt most comfortable talking to. She saw me around, we have a relationship, and then we activate the necessary parties. I'm certainly not gonna try to solve any of those problems, but I think, or if there's some type of gross neglect happening somewhere that a board member needs to know about, they should have a right to come to us without fear of retaliation.
I think the notion of the statement is, it's irrelevant, right? I mean, we're saying that we could punish you for talking to any one of us about anything. And it really doesn't matter, because in the end, if somebody talks to me about something, to Barb's point, then it turns out into a bad thing, well then we revert to something else. But just throwing a bottomless threat out there, I don't think it encourages communication with anybody. Just my 2 cents.
But it also makes it clear that, like kind of what Barb was stating, that they're not gonna be off the hook if they did something wrong.
Of course not.
Right.
One of my concerns with striking this would be all of our policies, especially in the 3 and the 4,000s, those are the policies that all staff live by. So if any one staff at any moment breaks any of those policies, that would be disciplinary. We could take disciplinary action on any of the policies. So if we would strike that from this policy, I still think that there would be an implication, or it would be implied that they could be disciplined because here's the policy and that's the purpose for the policy. Just like any other policy, if we're out there and staff does XYZ and we go out to policy to say here's our policy and you didn't follow policy, now that person can be disciplined for not following policy or doing something against policy.
So you're saying you don't want anybody to talk to the board members?
Yeah, you're closing our doors,
No.
is what this
I'd
policy
say
is
strike that
doing.
bottom, strike the last line.
But
You can
I also
strike it.
think that
No reason for it.
eventually, when we have concerns coming forward, there could now be a conflict of interest if a board member was brought in
Then
on
we
the
step
very
out.
first
And you recuse
versus
yourself.
And that's why there's
later
7
on
of
in the
us.
process.
But A, B, and C, like, cover everything. Again, I'm not in favor of ever throwing out a threat. Again, if somebody,
I don't see it in the
It's
threat,
just
though.
clearly tied. So the sentence before it is employees are expected to follow the established chain of command as described in this policy. Failure to do so, failure to follow the chain of command may result in employee discipline. I don't know how we're tying that to other things, other policies. It's clearly tied to not following the chain of command of communication. Like we
is there a policy written, and I should know this, but I don't, if a teacher goes straight to Allison versus going, do they get disciplined for that as well?
So they skip their principal and go straight to you? Are you scolding them for that? Is there disciplinary action for that?
I would say if anything, I mean, if somebody comes to the board and we run it amok, we're the ones that, now we go down to policy 0144.5 where the board member's behavior or conduct on how they handle the situation would come into question. But I don't think
I don't
staff
think
should
the
be cut
intent
off.
was it for it to be a threatening language. This is a standard Neola policy. So I don't think, I think also they're always ensuring that the policy protects you as a board as well, so that you don't have to step out of something, you know, so that, and I understand there are 7 of you, you're right, but if we have someone come to one board member and then another board member, and then pretty soon, then if you know the situation and then it does end up in your lap and it has to go through that, then we don't, then I have a couple that have to recuse themselves. So it may be always not advantageous, but I'm understanding of what you said, Jennifer, of, you know, we need to be really good board members and we need to call them back to the chain of command, and you need to help them find the person that can sit with them to talk with their building principal or to talk with me or whomever the supervisor is that they're struggling with. And yes, the next thing to do is to call me and say, hey, I had this come up. How are we gonna help the staff member? And that's the practice that should be happening. It's not a holding of information or, you know, someone told me something and now, you know, we don't know what to do with it. So it is strong language in a policy. I went through a whole bunch of policies to see if we found that in other places, and we do find that, you know, that is common, kind of, especially in the 3000s and 4000s. It's language where, you know, there may be disciplinary action. I have empathy though that as a board you're thinking we're trying to close a door. It has nothing to do with that. We're just trying to ensure that you also have that protection of, hey, you need to get to the right person. But I'll ask about taking out that phrase. I mean, it's not a problem.
So I think you should understand that this is coming directly from your staff.
Mhm.
This is not something the board just decided maybe we should do this because it makes us feel some kind of way. It doesn't. So, and there is nowhere in my company policy, and I would guess most of us who work for large corporations, there is nothing that you can call any level of any organization you want any day. My staff is encouraged. We have numbers on the wall of people you can call. Like, this is a little bit archaic in my mind.
Yeah, I feel it's very closed. I know you said it's not closed door, but it feels very closed door. And, you know, I, again, work for a big corporation and it is very much encouraged. Open door policy at all levels. I could go 3 people above my supervisor and I'm not getting disciplined for that.
Well, and in the end, if this comes up in a different light, then we deal with it again.
Yep.
Well, the whole thing comes back to, like you said, our ethics and what we do with it.
Right.
We can listen.
Yeah.
And then say, do you feel you can talk to Curtis? No, I really can't talk to Curtis. Well, do you feel you can talk to...
Leave it.
Talk
You're still on, dude.
Talk to Brooke, you know, I mean...
Come at Matt next time.
Talk to Allison. But we can't say, well, we're gonna fix this at a board meeting. That's totally out of it.
No,
No.
I
And
agree with
everyone
you,
has to
Barb.
understand that.
The goal is to resolve the issue for whatever employee
At
has
the
the
correct
issue.
level.
If they feel comfortable going to me, I'm gonna bring it up to her.
Right.
That's- But that's
Right.
less
And that's-
encouraging with that language.
My biggest thing is, again, Neola this is their business. They've been doing this. These policies have been written because at some point, something has happened. It might not have happened in Pulaski. It may have happened who knows where. But they're the professionals here. They're the ones that have all the legal aspect. And I just get worried that if we start taking things out that they have created already, something could come on either us, the administration. So that's just one thing to think about too is, I mean, we're paying them to create these, and at some point there was something or some reason why it was in there.
See what
I
they
made
say.
a note
She's
of
gotta
that
make
as
a note
well.
of it. We'll
So
see what they come
I
back with.
wrote a couple notes in there and I grabbed that thought, but I just wanna make sure that the only line is failure to do so may result in employee discipline.
Right.
Okay. Correct. So I have that one.
The other thing we have to be very careful of is if Steve, they come to you with something and you refer them, you do what you're supposed to. But the next time you see Heidi, you talk about it. Because every time one of us knows something about that's knocking it out for the final, what do they call it? If there's a.
Final decision maker, really.
Well, if it has to come back to the board for a final hearing, then you're both out. So we have to really watch that.
And I think that's why we're so like, oh, we just know, because we're hearing more and more about that. Like, we can use Title IX as an example. We were just, our kind of, like, by the time we were done with our meeting, our shoulders were kind of down, way down, because we just know that there's gonna be a lot of guidelines and.
Yeah, but if I share it with her, that's a me and her issue, that has to be dealt with as board members. You know, in the end, you know, we want our staff to be engaged.
Right.
And if this does turn south, to your point, Sarah, and something, then I think we need to address it. I mean, I understand Neil wrote all this stuff, but they don't live in Pulaski. They're just a company who knows where, just cut and pasting. And I like the ability to be able to ask these questions and challenge some things that we think would fit better in our community.
Yeah, so we'll get some more information on it. I mean, they're gonna tell us why it's there or why they don't recommend taking it out, and we'll hear that, and then we'll decide what's best for us.
And I think our staff will respect that.
Agreed. That'll give us the why. All right, 6320 is the final, this is our 6320.
5511.
Oh, sorry, 5511, dress code. All right, Matt, now you're up. So the board has, wanted to talk about dress code. I think this is probably gonna apply mostly to the high school. And what is your, I think we'll start with what is your interpretation of the dress code 5511? How are you enforcing it? What does it look like? So can you guys kind of tell us, from your perspective, what your expectations are at the high school around dress code?
If you don't mind, I could probably speak a little bit better to it just for the history and how things kind of came about, seeing as though last year was Matt's first year. So I would say this whole thing came around when, you know, you're living in the high school, you're breathing it every day, and you start to notice patterns, right? So looking at the data, I think it was the 2021 school year, we had 45 instances in our EduClimber of dress code violations. What that really means is there was probably about 45 negative staff-student interactions. And what we did notice in the office that we would get really big reactions, a lot of emotions, and then staff upset that they had to be a part of it. We had complaints in the office, why am I the judge of what somebody's wearing? I feel uncomfortable, I don't want to be the one to do that. We had a lot of male teachers say, I will not tell a female student what she can be wearing. And it was just kind of a contentious thing. So it became something we thought we should look at and just have a better understanding of. So what we did was, I did a lot of research, and I wound up getting hooked up with a man named Dr. Keith Robinson. He works out of Evanston Township in Illinois. He worked with our team. He gave us a really different, I would say, for some progressive perspective on things, something that was a little bit hard for people to wrap their heads around at first. And really his main point was, he said, take a look at your current dress code. Who is it targeting and who is it talking to? Well, I pull up our dress code and it's all pictures of girls and all the things they're doing wrong. Not one picture of a boy and potentially something he could be doing wrong. So that was kind of a red flag for us. We were like, yikes. And he brought us back down to the Oregon Now model. It's a national organization for women. What they sought to do was create a dress code that, in their words, was not sexist and did not body shame. So where this hit home for me was, last day of school of that school year, I had a girl brought down to the office out of the commons. She was hysterical crying, and a teacher was telling her, you can't wear that. Now, when I say that she thought she looked great, and she really did, it was a beautiful outfit. There was nothing inappropriate about it. If I'm going to be completely honest with you guys, she was a bigger girl. And that's why she was brought down. They didn't like that they thought she was wearing this skirt, and it was showing too much, and I disagreed with the teacher. And I looked at our policy and as it was, and I was like, this actually is not breaking anything. You're just personally offended by having to look at her body. That was a hard reality I had to talk to that person about their moral judgment, their schema, and having to apply it to what that child's parents felt was appropriate for that day. I spoke to the student and I said, it's the last day of school. Sweetheart, I think you look great. Why don't you just stay? Nope. She left, hysterical crying on the last day of school. And that hit me. I felt horrible. Because when I was in high school, I was the girl who could wear the short shorts and the tiny tank top because there was no body there. I was just like a little pole. And what we started to notice when I look back was, it was the bigger girls that were coming down to the office. The smaller girls were never getting dress coded by the teachers. And God bless them, I love our teachers, but I think it's something as a society we've been conditioned to be more offended when we see more skin of a bigger person. That's when we went back to Dr. Keith, and he helped us to he gave us a skeleton of a model that basically said, the kids have to wear certain things. They gotta be wearing a top, they gotta be wearing a bottom, and they gotta be wearing shoes. But beyond that, who are we to judge what a family deems to be appropriate for their child and what the current trend is? And I don't know if any of you have teenage daughters, but the only thing out there right now is crop tops. Well, we had a policy that said you cannot show your stomach as a female. Boys, we don't really care for some reason. We're not offended by boys' stomachs, but we're super offended by girls' stomachs. We're super offended by girls with bra straps showing. Well, a girl can't help that her breasts are a larger size and that she needs a bigger bra, that maybe that strap's gonna show through the tank top. There are a lot of things that inherently girls can't help about their bodies, and our dress code was shaming. So we knew we just had to start over. And we worked with Dr. Robinson. He helped us to create this dress code along with a philosophy. I think there's a current misconception that the high school has no dress code. That's something that's thrown out around a lot. It's actually 3.5 pages long. It's the longest dress code in the district. It's very clear, it's very concise, and a big piece of it speaks of, and I'm not gonna have this memorized, but all of the things you can't wear at the high school. So to say you can wear whatever you want is not exactly true. So you cannot wear violent language or images suggesting alcohol, drugs, vaping, paraphernalia of any kind. You cannot wear a bulletproof vest, body armor, tactical gear, anything like that. You cannot have anything on you that is implying hate speech, profanity, or pornography, anything that's creating a hostile or intimidating environment. And that kind of goes back to a Supreme Court decision back in the 60s, which we can't decide that we think it's going to be a problem. It actually has to create the disruption. And those cases have gone back to the Supreme Court since that time, and they've always won. So for me to say, I think this is going to be an issue, but it doesn't really apply here, take it off, those people have gone to court and they've won, unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it. Any clothes that completely reveal your undergarments, any swimsuits, you can't be wearing a swimsuit to school, anything that could be considered a dangerous accessory, and then anything that's obscuring your face and your ears so that we're not able to tell who you are, with exceptions being made for religious garments and personal protective equipment. Because that of course happened all during COVID as well. So there were a lot of things that we would not accept at the high school, and I would say that 99% of the time kids wear what they were always going to wear, with the exception of the crop top. That was very exciting for our girls. They felt like they were able to, and I mean, these are not tiny, it's like an inch, but it wasn't acceptable in the past. And so really what our dress code aims to do is not body shame, to allow parents to tell their child what they can wear to school within reason. And if you do fall under the category of one of those things that we find unacceptable here at school, then you will be made to change your clothes, and there's a progressive discipline steps within our handbook for how that gets handled. The following school year, we had 4 instances of dress code violations where teachers did report to me feeling more comfortable being able to say, no, I know for a fact that's not allowed. So one was a country star who sells shirts, his name, effing his last name. She wore that to school. I think there were 2 instances of beer advertising, and then 1 instance where, yes, walking down the hallway, I felt strongly that you would be able to see parts of this person that you should not be able to see, so we asked them to change their clothes. But in all 4 instances, they were very understanding. They understood why. There wasn't that gray, I think it's too short, I think that's not okay, that's a little too scandalous, or I saw too much cleavage, I'm sorry you have a bigger chest. It takes away that whole piece of, that can get really icky. And quite frankly, when I've seen other parts of the state even, where students have protested, created big deals out of these things, and they've kind of always won. So we thought, let's be proactive, let's get ahead of it, let's let our students wear what they feel comfortable wearing. What we found was a lot of kids are, when they feel good, they do good. When they feel regulated, when they feel like their best selves, they're learning as their best selves. And one instance I will say is that the hats, that was controversial, wearing a hat at school. A lot of our kids who are suffering with mental distress or any sort of social anxiety, that helped. It gave them this sense of comfort. Some of our students with autism felt like that tightness around their head was helping. So there was actually really good things. One of the concerns came out was, how are we going to know who they are with their hat? Well, they wear the same dang hat every day. It actually made it easier to identify them on the camera. I was like, I know who that is, because their shirts change every day, but their hats don't. So that actually was something that we were thinking, is that going to be a problem? But it turned out to actually help us. I understand that not everybody's on board. There are people who are a little bit more conservative with that. But we did explain that why to our staff. Our students, it was a huge win for our students. They loved it. They felt like they were getting to be more trusted as students. And for the most part, the dress didn't change too much. Every now and then you see somebody walk by and I'm like, whoa. And then I kind of have to check myself. I'm not their parent. I'm not the moral authority. Is everything covered that our policy asks them to cover? Yes, it is. Would I put my child in it? No, I wouldn't. But again, it's not my child. So if they feel great and they're ready to learn and they're regulated, we should really be focusing on learning. So that was the philosophy behind the whole thing.
We don't regulate hair, do we?
No.
I know so many districts have tried to regulate hair, and that really bothers me.
No, especially for religious reasons. There are students who grow their hair certain ways, wear their hair certain ways. We would never want to step into that territory.
Brooke, can you just talk to staff and their staff working with dress code, and are they on board? What's the work that you're doing with staff at the high school for continuing to get people on board with that? Is there pushback? Is there not pushback?
We rolled that out with staff. I would say in the beginning it was a little like, whoa, Brooke just said nipples, Brooke just said breasts, but we have to talk about these things, right? So there was a little bit of that in the beginning. You can see there are some people whose faces are like, we're really going to do that? And we tried to really just drive home the point that you are here to teach, not here to judge. Unless it's disrupting the learning environment or it's a safety issue, we probably shouldn't get involved. So that being said, nobody can be wearing something that would be dangerous in the shop. It's not like, oh yeah, wear whatever you want, I'm never going to question it. If it's a safety issue, of course you need to be. If it's a PE issue, of course you need to be wearing the right shoes. So we tell our teachers they have the right to determine what's safe in their classroom and implement those things. They also have the right to teach students what is expected dress. So our business classes, they talk about how a professional looks in a business area. But that being said, I did have a teacher say to me, my dad's a professional. He doesn't wear a suit every day. He's a farmer, but he's a professional. Don't call him not a professional. We can talk to those students in the ag department about what they should be wearing for their best dress when they're in that field, or a welder, so it's something for us to teach. We can certainly address it, but to tell a child like you cannot wear it, it's kind of murky territory that the way we see things going, I think we're ahead of the game there.
So to answer her question directly today, where are your staff at? Where are the teachers at?
I have not received any complaints or concerns. I think 2 years ago there was a survey result that said I'm uncomfortable with how much cleavage I'm seeing during the school day. That was one staff member anonymously.
That's their problem.
Yeah, these are children.
That's a different problem.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
I mean, the policies, it also makes a really important point, which is also a perspective shift for people. When we say things like that girl shouldn't be wearing those shorts, they're too short. Well, too short for who? Is it that the girl needs to change her outfit, or the boy needs to be taught how to not objectify the girl?
Right.
And not make her this sexual being that needs to change something about herself to make and I'm saying boy and girl, and that's not correct either, but to make the person who's feeling uncomfortable by it or feeling tempted by it, that's that person issue and not the girl's issue. So again, big perspective shift. And I think I had staff that were like, geez, I never thought of it that way. If you'd asked me last week, I would have told you something different. Now I'm starting to realize, do I know that every single staff member agrees with me on this? I can't say that for sure. I can't. I think we probably have 1 to 2 that I can picture students who try to push that line a little bit. But again, we go right back to this policy. It is so clear, and I can say to that student, this is why you are not allowed to wear this. This exact bullet, this number right here, nothing to do with your body size. It all has to do with what we've deemed to be inappropriate at school. So, I mean, big win for the girls, I think, in the sense of just trying to teach others to not, you know, objectify their bodies so much, and to make judgments that they should cover up so I'm not offended. You know, it's something that I think is evolving as a society, and we're not all there yet, but I do think it's where we're going, and I think it is smart to be proactive on that end, because I think that's where most school districts are going to wind up, because eventually, and Dr. Keith Robinson said he had a sit-in his district office with students telling him, you're not gonna tell us what to wear. And that's when he knew he needed to change. He was like, be on the front end of this, it can get really not great. So I understand that there could be concerns, I do, but I think everything was done with good intentions and not to just let kids run amok and do whatever they want. There was some real thought behind that.
Is this published in the student handbook?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Pages 42 through 45.
That's right where it is, and now our new person.
You should not have too many questions after you're done reading it, but you may not agree, but it's at least, it's clear.
And you know, I think to your initial question, I mean, that's mine. Now, I wasn't part of that process, right? That happened before I came in, but you know, I had some questions early on, like, oh, do we allow hats? Do we allow this? Like, okay, so I went and read the dress code in our handbook. It's like, okay, that's where we're at, with the understanding that it references the district policy, and that the district policy's been approved and the handbooks have been approved. And it's very timely right now because we're in the process of updating our handbook, right? So I mean, I guess what I would wonder as we're looking to finalize those, you know, updates, if you will, to the handbook, is there any specific concern with any of the current language that is in those pages 42 through 45?
I think what, we don't have that on this tonight,
Oh,
so
gotcha.
I'll have to draw you back on that, but what we specifically had for discussion would be the dress and grooming policy 5511. So I would just refer you to that, because that would, your handbook is separate from policy, though that's where you would find, and I believe even in your policy that you have some guidelines on how things are handled as well, so.
And I don't see anything in this policy that
references the handbook.
No, but that interferes with what you've been doing. I mean,
They're in policy 5511, it does have just on the bottom, it says the development of the dress code. So that each school would engage in the efforts to develop a dress code that prescribes certain types of dress and that identifies building specific dress expectations, so.
So,
no, go ahead. Matt, what's the policy on hoods? I've had teachers in your building reach out about hoods and having the pods in their ears, they can't see them, whether they're listening or not.
So the pods in the ears would be more of a technology violation, not so much a dress, because we don't consider that to be like dress. However, the policy itself, the guidelines within our handbook do call for, you can wear a hood unless it's a safety issue in your class. Like, I would not suggest wearing a hood during shop class, right? That would be very dangerous. So the teachers will say at the beginning of class, take your hoods down. Well, what the activity we're doing right now, and this can happen in social studies class, that needs to come off if they have a good reason for it. I mean, that being said, you can wear a hood, but your ears need to be exposed, your face needs to be exposed. You can't do one of these. Remember, like South Park, where you would pull the things, you know,
Hard to wear a hood
like
without
this.
your ears.
You can't be doing that. But the hoods, and I would say
That's the concern I've had. You've covered some other stuff, but the hood's is one thing that concerns teachers, whether they're paying attention or they can't see their ears. So,
They could not be paying attention with.
Oh, I know that.
But it's a real concern, right, to be playing your
and respect
earbuds while,
Yep.
and I mean, again, though,
respect,
this ties back into like our behavior and wanting to address student engagement. You know, I mean, if their class is giving you the ability to sit for half an hour with your earbuds, and are we really engaging the students? So that is a question, a valid question. It's a technology violation. They should not be listening to music or something else during class. We have the right to take it. That's part of our cell phone guidelines here at the high school. If you're misusing your technology during class time, it goes to the office for the rest of the day. That's it.
And to
Pick it up at 2:55.
Point, I don't know, to answer your question if I may, I mean, specifically on page 44, it says hoodie, sweatshirts, those are allowed. Wearing the hood overhead is allowed, but the face and ears must be visible to school staff. currently with.
So then those staff need to, I guess, be a little more up to
Kids
date
are
on
yours.
that. Yeah, exactly.
And we can do a better job of empowering our staff to feel like they can call the students on that, and maybe come back around to that and let's go through the details of this,
There's an asterisk comment beneath that says students must comply with any staff member's request to remove hoodies for academic, instructional, or identification purposes.
Oh, of course, if we're walking the hallway and we really can't figure it out, it's like hood down. And I can't really think of any incidents where kids would not comply with that, because I think they know that they don't want this to go away. So we made that very clear actually the year we rolled this out, like, guys, if this doesn't work out and this is misused and this is just, it'll go away. And so I think kids were just really excited and wanted to prove that they could do this the right way. Every now and then you might have a one-off, but for the most part our kids are doing a good job with it.
Well, I really think that the caps too. I think you're smart not to try to enforce no caps. That's a regional fashion statement. We even have people sit with their caps on in here all night long. I was raised, you walk in the door, you take off your hat. But that's not what it is anymore, especially in this region.
Yeah, the boys, you get a bad haircut, you cover it up, there's just all different reasons why kids want to be wearing their hat during
When I was a
the
kid.
day.
My mom gave me bad haircuts.
And it's created a lot better relationships between teachers and students. The hat thing, for sure. Like, take off your hat. Why? Why do I have to take off my hat? I don't know, our policy says it. And there would be this argument between a teacher and student that I felt was so unnecessary and had nothing to do with learning, right?
It used to be politeness.
Mm-hmm.
Considered polite.
A way of showing respect.
Right.
Right, and so if that's still your mindset, yeah, that student is being disrespectful, but if we can shift the perspective there, it's not about disrespect, that can improve student-teacher relations.
Thank you very much for that explanation.
Yes.
I
Thank
wish that could be videoed so we could share it because
I think it was.
Right? Just because it's one of those things where people are like, how would you approve that? And all of a sudden you walk through the high school and you're like, I don't know how that was approved, but that explanation was well done, so thank you.
Yes.
Very well
Thank
done.
you for hearing me out. And I do understand that 100% of people are not going to say, I agree with you. But I do think we should give each kid a shot to at least feel comfortable at school, within reason.
Well done. All right, with that said, is there anything we are proposing to amend right now?
No,
Good.
I don't want to read the
Well
handbook,
done.
but yeah.
Thank
Sure.
you, Brooke.
No problem.
6320.
This is the bidding one.
This is the bidding one, so we had some possible thought on changing the minimum amount. Right now, the minimum amount is 5,000, I believe, maybe bumping that to 15. And then a little bit more clarity. I guess, Steve, I'm gonna let you talk here.
Did you want to talk about the change in amount, Mark, based on your findings?
Yeah, so Steve had asked about, is $5,000 a relevant number? It's probably not. I did some comparison with other districts. One of them was still at 5, the others have moved to 10. Some have different formats, most of them are on Neola. Moving it from 5 to 10,000, there's about 50 vendors in there. Some of them aren't biddable. It might be, Pittsfield Sewer or something like that we would never have an opportunity to bid. So it would eliminate some of those, and then about the same number from 10 to 15. So, when it comes to grants, we still have federal policy that we have to follow and whatnot, but this would probably be a more realistic approach to, things that should be bid out. And again, we don't do a whole lot of purchasing. We have a lot of people around here, but, our groups know what their bids are, so I think it makes sense.
All right, and then the language, I know we had a couple back and forth earlier this month, or actually last month, around some of the language around what needs to be bid out and what doesn't need to be bid out. Can you just give a little context on that?
Sure. Yeah, so there's a couple things. There is no language for annual bids. So, my interpretation of it, and I checked with other biz managers, is, it's really up to a practice. So, there are some things that you wouldn't bid every year. Our auditor contract, we get a 3-year deal with them and they bid it out. It's just, there are some things, garbage services, where kind of industry shows, hey, this is the service. It wouldn't make sense to bid it every year. But it's not really stated in here as far as how that
impacts. Obviously, you can't bid something once for 20 years. So it's open for kind of just our practice. One thing we need to work on is our bid schedule and sharing that out. So, and then the language for there's language when not a nature of price negotiations would result in a savings to district. We don't take that lightly, but there are some times where things are difficult to bid, or the process of it wouldn't result in a savings. So, there is some open language in the yellow policy.
So this is just an example around the health insurance self-funding. So we did not bid that out, but is that something we contracted Brown & Brown to do on our behalf? Like to find us the solution? Because did we transfer, I'm gonna use the word power, to them to come back to us?
Sure. So in 23-24, our current year, it was bid out. So they went to market, so they bid a fully insured option. And then they also price quoted, because it was multiple different vendors, the self-insured option. Knowing that going to a self-insured option, we wouldn't go every year. And we probably set a time frame of, every 3 years we'll check it on a fully insured. So now going into a single year, we didn't bid out against fully insured, but of their components, of our partnerships, our third-party administrator has a fee, our prescription has a fee. The one that did go out is our reinsurance, and that one was bid out. That's a large dollar amount.
Okay.
So it would be at our guidance to do it either way. If we say, hey, Brown & Brown, well, one, it's at the district level if we want to continue our partnership with Brown & Brown. That's our management as we move from M3 to them. So that's on us. And then it goes into, we want you to go out and get price quotes for fully insured. That would be another column. And then, hey, we're not happy with our partnership with United Healthcare, or we want to just validate what they're charging us. Bid out all of these services. So there's multiple levels in there. I would say that falls in, my recommendation would be a 3-year cycle of going out fully insured versus our partnerships too. Or at any time before then we're not happy with the services we're providing. If we had a reinsurance claim that didn't go the way we thought it should, and we had to incur legal expenses, we'll go out to bid right away.
So we could have an upfront conversation around that stuff, right? Because when the insurance, I'm just using insurance as an example.
Sure.
I'm not here to, I'm not complaining about it, but we got it the day we needed to approve it. So if we got to a point, let's just say like December, and you were looking at the financials, like this is not working out well, at that point you would come to us and say, we are going to likely be bidding out different options for the next year.
Yeah, and same thing, kind of you're learning as you go through it throughout the year. When we knew that we removed $1 million claim off of our insurance, we knew there wasn't a reason to go out for bid wholeheartedly that it wouldn't happen. So yeah, when those items come through.
Okay.
So
And then the other interesting one in the policy is there's nothing that says the district has to take the lowest bid. So they went out and bid SEL curriculum. They come to the board with a recommendation that's not the lowest bid. So even if we price check, if Nick says this is the field sprayer that we need, and you price quote, there's nothing in policy that says here's your process. We have our own internal process of saying.
And I think that's okay, because I think as part of the presentation to the board of the recommendation, you guys call that stuff out. I don't think we need to micromanage to that level. The biggest thing for me was making sure that we raise that number. If not, you're bidding out everything, that's a waste of time. And you've done this stuff many, many times. And two, to make sure that everything of substantial nature is bid out, and we're not doing little chunks to just, and I'm not saying you are, to avoid things, that we look at things holistically and say, all right, this insurance is gonna be $7 million. Yeah, it's fiscally responsible to bid this stuff out. So, okay. I'm fine with the change and everything else.
I just want to add 2 things. So stop loss, that will be something that we do every single year. But then also from anytime when we need to look at this from a different level, and we need to, whether we're unhappy with service or costs are astronomical and we need to re-review that, After our benefit advisory committee meetings, we'll give you updates. So like the last 2 or probably 3 years now, we give an update right around that January mark, so you kind of know what's coming in March or April.
Okay.
I was gonna say too, you guys, new board members are at a disadvantage. They come in May. A lot of the stuff that we end up voting in May or June has been talked about, but it's before you got on, you know? You don't know what we've already heard too.
And that's a great point, Bart, because maybe that's something we need to make an initiative to in our onboarding process is, you know, kind of going over the last maybe year of info so they know what's been discussed.
I'm glad I'm not gonna be new anymore.
Yeah. You can't absorb that all in 1 month, right?
No, so Mark, the changes in this policy.
Just the figure of 5,000 to 15 is one, and then I personally wouldn't add annual language, and
I'm fine not changing any of the other language as long as we're all of the understanding that and I'm saying you guys bring something to us, you're just gonna say, this was bid out or this wasn't bid out.
Sure.
Just so we know.
yeah,
I think that just helps us to know that due diligence
The
is
majority of
done.
the items we discussed are administrative guidelines that I share all with people.
Yep, I'm satisfied with that.
Okay, good. You have what you need, Allison.
So is this one that we should move to draft and I'll also be bringing back, correct?
Yeah, all of them except 5511. Okay.
Could approve it right now, we don't need to.
Curtis, you're up.
Sweet AGR. I sent to the board every year. We do this twice a year. I do it typically in the wintertime, and it talks about our fall and winter achievement. And then I present it to you again in the summertime, and that's our spring. This year we had another little wrinkle. We are up for our 5-year plan. Was notified by Mark, who I believe got an email on the 17th, and we came over to did the plan. It was due it's due tomorrow, so I'll come in tomorrow and submit it. However, I got a chance to talk with the head of the AGR program at DPI. Him and I video conference. I actually shared my document with him. We reviewed it together, and he already kind of gave me pre-approval on it. What that plan does is there's some assurances on there. It outlines kind of our goals that we're going to do for the next 5 years. It also assures that that we have teacher representation on there as well. So I used our coalition members for kindergarten, first, second, and third. Contacted all of them via phone just to ask if I'm able to use their electronic signature tomorrow. So I'll make sure that gets in tomorrow as well. Mark knows anytime I send anything, because it involves the dollar amount that it does, anytime I ever have any correspondence with AGR, I send it to Mark. The other day I was in his office and I see that he's got a whole folder started for AGR because we were looking for something else. So, and then touch base with Allison too as well today. I get nervous about that just because of the dollar amount. AGR stands for Achievement Gap Reduction. There's 3 different strategies that we can use. We can cap sizes at 18 to 1, 18 students to 1 teacher. We can do some additional instructional coaching within those particular classrooms, or you can go out and hire another teacher and have super low class sizes. Typically in the 13 years that I've been here, we've always been really good about 18 to 1. I remember when I first came to visit Pulaski, I was coming from Illinois where we were averaging 25 to 35 kids in a classroom, and I remember asking Eric Vanden, who's giving me the tour at the time, I'm like, where are all the kids? I was walking into these rooms, but we try to really take advantage of those class numbers, 18 to 1. So the past 2 years using FastBridge, we've really stopped looking at that end-all be-all achievement, and we really tried to focus a little bit more on growth. I guess, long story short, we kind of started using FastBridge really to fidelity for those 3 years, and now with Act 20, we're no longer using FastBridge again. This past year, especially for reading, we started new curriculum. We have Tools of the Mind in kindergarten, and then we switched to HMH into reading for first, second, and third. We also used a different assessment within Fastbridge this year that focused a lot more on just really on fluency regarding kindergarten and first grade. We met in the wintertime at that time, and for Steve, there's a 28-page thing that I sent to DPI, and for years that's kind of what we would go through. Had a suggestion from the board members and from Allie to kind of condense it onto an easy-to-read two-pager. I'm always happy when there's more green on there that shows growth. We did have a couple of reds in there as well. There are things that even on a sheet like this that I'm able to meet with grade level teams on, at their collaborative teams, to be able to discuss that as well. Kind of sometimes you see a little bit of anomalies where, like, for example, like right on top when you're looking at kindergarten reading, we were at 55 in the winter and we were at 56. So we actually went up from winter to spring, but yet our winter growth was 71, and then the growth plummets to 44. And it's like, to me, I look at that and go, how is that even possible? Like, how does our growth decline, but yet our overall achievement go up? So with whatever new test the state says we're going to be using under Act 20, we'll learn to try to dive in and dissect. I am going to say sometimes it is a little disheartening that you feel like, okay, we're trying to fine tune these things, and all of a sudden somebody comes and moves the goalpost, and that's nobody in this room. But sometimes it's like we were just getting to there. So I'm hoping that whatever comes around with Act 20 stays around.
Chris, does that spring reading score go back to the start, or is it go back to the winter and now the baseline has been changed?
So in the fall, so for example, in the fall, right out of the gate, I will just look at kindergarten reading. Fall out of the gate, we had 67% of our kids at that time on that test that were received as college pathway or low risk. When they took a test again in the winter time, and those tests do slightly, the measurements change a little bit as they go. It's not like they're given the exact same test 3 different times. At that time in the winter, we print off individual maps for kids. At that time in the winter, our number dropped from 67% college pathway to 55%. However, at that time, the growth from fall to winter, we had 71% of our kids were making typical or aggressive growth. That's really the number that our goals are focused on, is that growth number. But when I presented then, that was already an anomaly. How is it that our overall achievement fell, but our growth went up? I'm not the best mathematician, Pat is, but for me, it's just, you look at those things, so it allows us, doing these reports does allow us to kind of dig down and try to find the why for that.
Wouldn't you, if you looked at that the other way though, if you have more students at the high end achieving, they're gonna have less growth.
Yeah.
Because they're not gonna continue to grow at the rate they are if they're already.
Correct. We have, and we've explored some of that as well, and that's really, I think, like last year at this time, when we were talking about that this was really one of like the second year of full implementation, that we started to see exactly what you were talking about, Barb, and it really lent ourselves to what do we do for those kids that already get it? In other words, what are we doing for those the kids that are testing in the 98th and 99th percentile? Mm-hmm. What type of enrichment activities? And we started breaking apart numbers as well. We'll say that in breaking apart all of these numbers, and one of the things that I wrote in all my notes for you guys tonight is sitting in collaborative team meetings, and we're talking about where students are at. We're talking about where students are at, and there's faces to those students. When we talk about tier 2 intervention groups or target time groups, like it's faces that we're talking about. So I am proud of that with our teachers, that when we do dig down and look into the data, like we have faces that go with that. They're not just percentages. Sometimes when we're reporting out to state and stuff, the numbers, we lose a little bit of sight of that. And within all of these, when I'm talking with kindergarten, first, second, and third, is this is another high stakes test, because our school is on spotlight, and I've been in these classrooms where teachers are having massive amounts of anxiety and stressed out because they feel like they're letting me down, or they feel like they're letting you down as a school board or as a school. So it's important for me to make sure we look at all of the numbers and remind them that, hey, this number isn't where we want it, but in comparison to our district, we're doing the right work, and then we'll go through and then we list, this is what we're, these are the steps that we're doing. How can this not be the right work? So we have lots of those conversations as well. Sorry to go the long way around, but I know we have some people on here. So at any rate, next fall, I'll put together some goals. They'll be in line with the goals that we came up with at SAIL. And I believe for literacy and math, that's 100% of our students will be making growth. We had talked with FastBridge, there's different categories of growth. There's flat growth, modest growth, typical growth, aggressive growth. It's all based on national percentiles. So in Barb's case, is the 99th percentile student who's making modest growth, is that still growth? And should that student be counted, or should we say, no, so that'll be discussion in those critical conversations that we'll have with our administrative team. I do not know with the 5-year plan. I had to chat with the guy from DPI today about, I said, the state has not come out and said what the assessment is going to be for Act 20. And he's like, oh man, that's a good question. So it is in our plan that just says we will be using whatever the state agreed Act 20 assessment will be. We will be using that in part to calculate growth for our students, and the growth again is from the fall to the spring. So this is the two-page summary. Like I said, not shying away from the good, the bad, and the ugly. I mean, we have a little bit of red on here as well, where we maybe fell down, but there's a lot of green on here too, which means positive growth. So we use that to celebrate.
I did have one question about kind of the future. Can we compare those scores or ratings or whatever you want to call it to the other elementaries that are just normal number classrooms?
We
and
have all of that data
to see if it's still worth trying to. I'm just thinking about growth in our district, growth in that building. Is it still worth trying to keep those grades that low compared to, is it working any better than our other buildings? I understand a couple of the buildings have grades classes that small, but not all of them.
I mean, we try to,
I'm not looking for a report tomorrow. It's just down the line when we, when we talk about the future.
Yep.
Like we did with Fairway, we figured out that it really wasn't worth it because.
I think the factor that we have used is whether we're more than breaking even, and we usually say to Mark once a year, like, "Hey, can you check that?" And he usually comes back and he says, "Nope, we're still ahead of the game by staffing the way that we are. We should keep it going." And so, but if that ever reverses on us, that now we're losing money, then
I'm looking at achievement, student achievement, and room.
Right.
Classroom size, using up all those classrooms for them. Just something to consider down the road.
This might be comparing apples to oranges, but looking at 3rd grade, do you think there's any predictor of how 3rd graders will do in relation to Act 20?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
So you have here 65% are college pathway or low risk, according to what?
FastBridge assessment.
Or FastBridge, sorry. According to Act 20, is that any kind of predictor? Like, ooh, we're sitting good, we think, or we're sitting in a good spot?
So we actually, the last 2 years, have had the buildings enter their data, and we've used the 25th percentile because that's what the state is going to use on their new assessment. And so we do have a sheet, and I think I've even shared it with you, that has given percentages when we kind of talked about Act 20 of who would have to be on a personal rating plan. We're about 200 students across the district that would, according to FastBridge, now that's not going to be the screener. We know the screener, they've sent out the statement to Pearson, so it's going to be a Pearson product. There's 3 pages of Pearson products. All indications, Ally's superintendent meeting, my CISA 6 meeting last week, is that it's going to be Ames Web Plus, which we used to give in the district prior to PALS being the required one. So actually, we've been in contact. I emailed them again tonight. I'm like, I want to know prices. I want to know, is the price that the state's going to pay at $3 a student, is that including math? What is it going to cost us to be 4K to 8th grade? I even during the meeting sent to Laura and I said, by the way, we're moving away from Fast Bridge, which means we won't be doing Sabres, but here's Ames Webb's SEL component that they have that now we would need to use. So check it out. So we're gearing up. The announcement's supposed to come by July 15th, but all indications from what we're hearing is to plan to go to Ames Webb Plus. But, and then it'll be the 25th percentile of their measurements.
The new assessment is gonna be, it'll be interesting. We talked a little bit about it in the wintertime, for example, where we had this year's first graders. We had numbers where, as of last year, when they ended kindergarten, we had like 5 students that would have been like the high-risk students, and when they retested in the fall as first graders, we all of a sudden jumped from 5 kids to 23. And it's like, sometimes some of these assessments, but obviously that's when we're putting together student lists and we're talking about kids, and to all of a sudden be like, what happened over the course of a summer? And it's, those are those things we want to start digging into, and I'm just, like I said, I'm hopeful that whatever assessment, hopefully the state will allow us to have that for the time that we need to really be able to dive deep into it and use all of the resources that we have to help drive instruction. So the plan will be, the 5-year plan will be submitted tomorrow. As soon as that's done, I'll send it to Mark and Allie as well, just so I need backup. I need other people to say yes, it was submitted on time. So, yeah, any questions?
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, personnel report.
All right, we have 7 new hires, one of which Janitra, welcome aboard. Hopefully everybody had the opportunity to meet Janitra in the beginning of today's meeting. We also have 2 transfers and 3 resignations out for tonight.
I make a motion to approve as presented.
A second.
All right, before we go to vote, I just have a question, and welcome aboard, Janitra, but I am going to question. So we have Matt here. Now we have a new AP at the high school. We're losing that middle level in 2 schools. What are we doing to develop our staff so we don't have to go outside?
We have a lot of good ideas, and we've been talking about that actually for probably 3 years, knowing the, I don't know if I can say this, Allie will probably holler at me later, but knowing the age and where the seniority and the amount of time that a lot of our veteran administrative staff is at. And we know that we have internal staff, teachers, or people in other positions that do work on their administrative degrees. But we feel like at times that's we're not directing them. They may individually come to us, and we've always been really great, like, here, yes, you can work on this project, or we can give you subbing time in a building, but it isn't an open, it's not like a catalog of opportunities, which is what I would like to develop. So it's something that I brought up with the central office team, and we're going to be working hard at developing all, and that's part of this coherence plan, as well as how are we keeping the capacity of our staff inside continuing to go throughout the district. So we're kind of excited to work in the middle of July on creating some opportunities that everyone, maybe they're interested in administration, maybe they're not, maybe they're interested in doing something different in the district, but this should be like a slate of opportunities that if people would like to take that opportunity, they should, they would have that chance to do it. So that when it does come time to having other positions open in the district, we, when they apply, we know how much they are interested in it and the work that they're doing. So that's one way, at least for growing our own, for lack of a better term, within, because I know that that's been something that that we've had interest in and we've had a lot of conversation around. We also know that when you are working in the district in whatever capacity, and I guess when you're looking at administrative, I mean, I could say it from any of our departments. So if we have someone, and Mark's always a great reminder, he'll say, well, that can happen in the departments as well too, right? We may have one of our line cooks decide they would like to be the lead, so if the lead cook position comes open, that might be something that they would wanna move into. Or when other positions go, you know, we always like to hire if we can from within. So that's one of the ways we feel like if we have more opportunities for people to show us what they can do, then that will be easier for us when it does come time for choosing and giving people an opportunity. And I answer your question a little bit.
A little bit, it sounds like we got some work to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So meaning,
Well, we don't have anything in place
well, I
right
wouldn't
now
say that we
that's
don't have
concrete.
anything, but I think that it's more individual interests and wants when people want to do something. It isn't something that pops into our brain. One of the pieces that I would like to do is just sit down with the people that I don't want this opportunity to only be for people that have their working on their administrative licenses, right? This should be for anyone, and it needs to cover all of our staff and not just be thinking about our professional staff. So when you're thinking about that, it would be nice, though an easy spot for me to start is just personally having the conversation with our professional staff that have already received their licenses, and what are they interested in something, and asking them to help us develop some of those opportunities that they think they could do. But we will be, you know, I'm going to be very open and honest about the fact that these positions and opportunities are not going to be paid. These aren't opportunities where we're going to compensate you for this additional time, because it's also part of the process. If you are, you know, we also want people to understand that moving into an administrative role calls you at a different level of work and time and presence. And it's different. It's not the same. And I think I could ask any one of my administrators that are here in the room, it is different. We aren't compensated, and we're not complaining about that, but it's very different being in the administrative role at whatever level you're doing that. So I think that it's a great spot to start, and we see excitement when they enter programs, and then there isn't always, I just don't think we're giving them enough opportunity to show us what they can do. And I think we have a ton of opportunities in the district. So we need to build that slate. It's gonna take a little time though for us. I mean, it's not something we can roll out in a month, but it's gonna be some ongoing work, and I think it'll take some time to have those conversations with the staff. I think I have about 20 or so that for sure that I can sit down with and talk about what are your interests, you know, what would be something you'd like to do. And I know of some opportunities now that, you know, if we knew that when our principals, sometimes they do get sick and they need to be out for a couple days, you know, and that's hard when we're stretched in a building. It may be a good opportunity for someone to sub in a building, that would be good. But that also is going to require them to build their lesson plans back on their side, and you know, it's shuffling those responsibilities, what we're going to do. And yeah, I think we can do better, and we know that. So we're going to work on that, and I think that's also going to give people a sense of, I want to do something in the district, and I'm going to do my best. And what does that look like when I do it?
Maybe part of intro too,
Mhm.
in the beginning of the year to
Yeah.
everyone.
Yeah.
Because maybe I'm a new teacher or a 3-year teacher, and I'm thinking about where I'm gonna go.
Mhm.
I'm not enrolled yet, but if I knew there were, you know, opportunities
right?
or what am I interested in, you know, just like we do with the 5th graders. What do you think you wanna be when you grow up? To the first year teachers and the third, you know,
Well, the
do
wonderful
you
thing
have plans? What do you think you wanna be in 5 years or 10 years?
The great thing about our district is that we have all of our staff, right? So we have every operation here in the district is going. So there's always opportunities for growth.
Like at the time of like evaluations and things, are those discussion? I mean, I think that's a great time to be having that discussion, right? Like you have that person one-on-one. Where do you see yourself going? Is this where you want to stay? Like, you know, myself, I would never want to be a supervisor. Like that's my personal statement. Do I want to continue to grow? Yes, but what does that look like not going down a supervisor role or, you know, whatever. So I think, you know, that's also a way to
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
The only other question I have is, with the departure of Tom Kraus, will we still be able to offer the program he was running? Was it through River Falls? Does anybody else do that?
He will
or-
continue to offer. He was an adjunct, you know, a teacher for that program, so he'll continue to instruct. That isn't our program.
Okay, they were just in our building.
Yeah, just
Okay,
in our building.
Excellent. Very
Very much like we have an MOU with University of Oshkosh right now, where our teachers that are involved in the math intervention program, they're in a master's program for math interventionist, and they're getting a discount on their masters because we have an MOU with them to have some of our, if you're a staff member of the district, then you have a discount on that. So very much like that.
Do we offer any tuition reimbursement?
Mhm.
Okay.
For teachers, not teaching staff,
It's in
no.
the contract.
Just administrators?
But they have, they are compensated for masters. Correct.
Okay. All right, any other discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried, thank you.
Just one side quick question, Alan. So, can you provide us how many current vacancies do we have?
Sure, we have 12 vacancies right now, both support staff and professional staff.
Okay, thank you.
All right, then we're on to May budget.
Yeah, so a couple of financial items coming up. The first one is the budget report. Obviously, we're busy with year end right here. We had our auditors out the last 2 days to start their preliminary audit. So a lot coming in the next month. One action item that I've kind of adopted is the this uniform allocation. I have a recommendation in there. So going back to 2015, the board has allocated fund balance. Last year I spoke about allocating fund balance is an interesting process. It's really somewhat planning, but it's not. It's not like I go in my office and I move $10,000 tomorrow. We just kind of say, hey, in the future we're going to spend these funds. This year we are going to be favorable. I put in a recommendation of, instead of going to $95,000 and bringing it back next year, the board's since 2015 has really committed to this future purchase. There's really no reason to keep waiting on it. My recommendation is let's allocate the $23,000 that remains, so that it's on the books that we have $108,000 sitting for future band uniform purchase. Don't have to do it. We can do 10 and then next year, but it's not that next year we're going to come and say we don't have $10,000 in fund balance. Obviously, we have just north of $10 million in fund balance. Allocating these funds is not a major deal for me. The other one that sometimes comes in June is a capital fund transfer to Fund 46. That one I'd like to hold off. You have until July 31st to do that. I would like to have a more accurate number, as I think we'll be able to do more than the $50,000 that was budgeted. And I'll have that recommendation prior to the board meeting, but I think it would be a better idea. Again, the reason why you do that one is that's an aidable transfer. So putting that money in knowing that we'll use it on capital funds, projects in the future is a good process. So those are the one action item I'd recommend, either the 10 or the full 23,000 for band uniforms, and then not recommending any action on capital fund transfer.
Mark, can you clarify the band uniforms? That's for when we replace the whole thing, right?
Yeah, so when you replace the whole thing, we'll have $108,000 set aside, similar to when we looked at a curriculum and actually said, how are we going to pay for this? We'll take it out of fund balance, right? So it's a future purchase. Something tells me that if they quoted this back in 2015, it probably is going to be more. I'm not really high up on it.
I just wanted to clarify for the newer members, because it's not where the band can just go dip in there anytime they feel
Oh,
like.
correct, yeah, it's for a planned replacement plan. So it would be, if it's gonna be this next year, that we throw it in the budget of taking all that money out of fund balance, or if it's gonna be 2 years. So it's just somewhat setting aside funds, but not so much. But yeah, it's not a line budget item for them, it was a replacement plan.
I move to approve your budget revision.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, so what we're looking at right now is number 14, the 23-24 budget revision. Any other questions on any of that?
So it's just the band numbers. You're gonna hold off on the rest. Right?
Or do you want us to specify if we're approving the 23,000 versus the 10?
Yeah, so it would be a motion to approve allocating $23,000 to
the band fund.
To the band.
Okay, so let's get
Is
that
that
clear.
all right? So I will move to approve the revision of the 23,000 to the band uniforms.
Just designation. instead of
Designation of 23,000 to the band uniforms.
And I will still second that.
Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Alright, so then, moving into, so we're still in the current year, 23-24, of a budget revision. Any major budget revision would have been talked about. We did not have any this year. The budget revisions that come through are, we collect funds for a field trip, so they spend the money on the field trip and it's a revenue increase for them so that they can manage it. When we host a tournament, we take in the funds and we pay out referees. We had a nursing grant come in that had remaining funds, so we did a budget revision. Common school funds came in higher, mental health aid came in higher, AGR came in higher, title amounts got finalized, and then when we sell something, so Spencer in the weight room sells $1,000 of equipment, we increase his budget. So it was all budget neutral transfers, but still bringing them to the board, that's why they come when they do to approve. Again, neutral on both sides. And then on special ed, it was hirings for an addition of an aide, speech and hearing, and then we added that transportation position. So the board approved all those hirings, we just didn't formally change the budget. Again, all cost neutral, no major changes to the budget. Should anything change in the budget from when it's approved to the public, we would bring it right away. So
you had mentioned in the previous approval that favorability, when will we have that number? Like how much favorable are we gonna be?
yeah, I mean, I have a number right now, probably about $500,000 favorable. It seems like a lot, that's 1% of our budget. This is a big week where we do all the teachers' payroll, payables. It's an odd year for health insurance, as we know, because we have to estimate what we're going to have in claims over the summer. So I've had that number, for about a month now, and we're right around there. Things can change with an audit entry that, I would say we're probably in that $300,000 to $700,000 range.
Okay.
So that's why I would come back and say, here's a recommendation for, we've only put $50,000 away for capital improvement. Here's an opportunity, and I'd have a recommendation or two for that. So,
So is our intent to close the gap on that favorability by bringing stuff forward that is waiting, or leave that sit in the fund?
we would leave it sit in the fund. Again, last year the district pulled out about, I don't have it on top of my head, about $400,000 in fund balance. So, we're at that 19%. So adding a little bit to our fund balance isn't a big deal. Again, knowing that, really part of it would be building up that insurance reserve should we ever have a bad year now that we're self-insured. So, we do minor things where a few projects got taken off of Nick's list or whatnot that, should we spend the money, should we pay our Apple lease, stuff like that. So we internally have been managed a few of those things.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. So that would just need approval for the budget revision.
I move to approve the 2024 budget revisions as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other conversation about that? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried.
Alright, moving into next year, so we've had several conversations on the 24-25 budget. I mentioned in April that it comes forward in June, really, to approve the budget. Again, jumping ahead, the time frame is, we'll continue to work as aid figures come in and grant dollars are finalized, staffing plans. But right now we're saying we intend to have a budget similar to this come the annual meeting so that we can continue to operate. So this is the DPI format. It's loaded on box where you can probably see it better. Right now we have an estimate for revenue limit. So revenue limit again is what the state says we're allowed to operate under. Long equation takes in pupil counts, takes in the amount set by the state, exemptions, and then everything in pink right now is assumptions, but those will all get finalized in the next couple months. And then the big one is so it comes to that $48 million is what the state says you can operate under. Takes off an estimate of aid of $31 million, and then it results. The big one right now is what the tax levy is looking like. So I put in there right now an estimated tax levy of $21.7 million, about a 0.3% increase from last year. So very flat levy, mill rate would go down. That's if this budget goes through. Again, large assumptions. Allie had just shared with me, everything that impacts aid. If Milwaukee schools pass a large referendum, they could pull more aid from us. So right now it's an estimate. That number will come out in the next week. So I will continue to update this budget throughout before it gets published. But a couple items to highlight: state aid I just mentioned comes out. We're huge reduction in federal aid. It's the end of our ESSER funding, so that $1.2 million we operated with last year. Open enrollment will be on both sides, so an estimated increase of $454,000. I'll jump to it on this side. The expense actually didn't go up that much, so open enrollment change would be positive. We had the increase of a 4%. We have the estimated insurance at 2%, and then one that we talked about was the transfer to the debt fund. So that is for Field of Dreams payment. I have more info on the debt, but those are large and general fund expense changes. Again, all have been discussed. Special ed, estimated 3% increase in state aid. Estimated increase, what increases that is, the 4% in wages is really most of our special ed. That it pulls from general fund. Debt service fund, so a revenue of $5.8 million. Here's where all that money is coming from. So the top three are tax levies. One is the approved referendum debt. The second one is a district approved energy exemption debt for our energy efficiency projects from a few years ago. And then that small amount is for Field of Dreams Phase 2. The other revenue coming into debt service I talked about is that transfer from Fund 10. So we pull the money from our fund balance and we move it into being able to make debt payments. We still have planned donations of $100,000 for Field of Dreams, and then there's minimal interest in this account because it only sits in there for a few days. So as tax dollars hit right before we pay them out, the rural revenue. So that ties out to the budget. And then here are the debt payments to be made. So again, the numbers line up as you levy for March and September of 2025, but we're paying end of 24 and end of 25. So you'll see the debt payments a little different than what the levy is, but those are the debt payments. So the top three are all very similar. And then the bottom two would be Field of Dreams made up of that transfer and the donations.
So Mark, what makes up that interest payment for Field of Dreams? Like, is that accumulated from the start till March of next year?
Sorry, which one?
$46,750.
That is, so when Phase 2 happened in 2018, they took out a 10-year note. Those are the interest payments. So in 2018, the board said they would cover, basically the taxpayers would cover the interest payment. So that is a March and September payment. So it's the interest payment on the $225,000.
Could we not use the favorability of this year and just deal with, instead of waiting till March?
Yes. So your option would be to refinance the debt. We could make an early payment on it.
You say could or could not?
We could not without refinancing it. So because it's a callable bond, you'd have to call it. You'd have to call it reissue. So you would call in all the debt, reissue it under a new schedule, or pay it off.
It's like $525, right? If I remember right, or $535 plus an interest payment.
Yeah. So if you add up all of our debt payments, right, that's what this year's coming to.
Interest is probably higher now than it was in 2018.
Yeah, so that would be one. But if you're going to call them and pay them all out of fund balance.
But if the favorability comes in at that number, we could just deal with it, right? It's more of a question. You don't have to answer it now. You can get back to me. I'm just curious. Sure. Instead of waiting until 2025, we have favorability now. Why won't we just take care of it and eliminate all that extra interest?
But you can't prepay it, like this.
He said you have to call it all forward. Either.
But you have to call the entirety of the bond, right?
Yeah, 535. Because right now we don't. You said for something in favorability, so we'd still have like 100,000 out there. Then we'd have to go then refinance. But if we come in even more favorable, and Mark, I'm kidding. Then we could pull this forward hypothetically and just
call the whole thing,
deal with it and be done.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, so this year you're taking 436,000. So right now it's 1.5 million is our total outstanding debt. Yeah.
Right, it's like 25, 26, 27.
Yeah, so, instead of paying interest for the next few years, you would pull that 1.5 million out of fund balance. The potential issue with that is, we utilize our fund balance.
Well, I'm not suggesting that, but there's a bond that comes due in March, if I recall correctly. Can't we just pull that 500,000 forward?
All the bond payments are fully scheduled out, so, you'd have to pull all future payments and reissue the
Okay,
debt.
now I understand.
Yeah.
Okay. So in the end, I got it.
But it's something that as we get closer to it, to look at it, if it was non-referendum debt that wasn't this change, the Glenbrook project just got paid off. If we could have, that 300,000, we could have paid it off with 2 years left and taken out of fund balance to save. If you get to a point, so to your point, that will happen. It honestly, it probably will happen in the next 18, 19 years with referendum payments of, you have enough to reduce your interest payment. So it's worth exploring.
How many more years of that energy do we have? That will directly impact taxpayers because that's specifically coming from them separately.
Yeah, 26, 27 is our last payment, so 3 more years of that. So now that, to your kind of example, that's one that you could not prepay because you get an exemption every year for the levy. So
That's a specific
based on
levy.
the schedule, if we paid the $3 million off, we'd only get a $1 million exemption. You'd be out $2 million. So
No, that's, I just wanted to know how many years.
looking at the other funds, so at the April meeting when we looked at wages, we talked about not levying for Fund 41 for capital projects for a year. That's captured in the current budget. Next year's Fund 46 is budgeted at that 50,000, as I talked about. We'll change it. Fund 49, we'll update that before the end of the year as we get a final construction schedule as to what will be spent in 24-25. We talked about food service today. It has a planned spend down as required by the school lunch program. Fund 80 has a slight increase, not a lot of changes in programming in Fund 80, except this will be our first full year of SRO since they came on January 1 last year. So that's the small increase in the community fund. So not a lot of changes for 24-25 budget, but a lot will happen in the next 3 months.
And you need approval?
Yeah,
on
this would be an approval. This will be our budget until the annual meeting.
So motion to approve the 24-25 initial budget as presented.
I will second.
A motion and a second. Any other conversation? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. And Steve, do you have anything else you want to talk about in the finance world before we get out of here?
No, we're good. I know after we close out the books, there'll be a consolidated summary of, like we had saw back in April. And then we're still working on the referendum for the projects representation, so nothing more.
Okay. All right, then that takes us to our second citizens forum. If anybody out there is still awake and would like to speak to us.
Sorry.
All right.
You're gonna regret putting this at the end. Just
Can I ask
a
a
couple
question?
things.
Is this a?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
Amy
I'm
Shores,
just- this is a-
W598 Huffa Park Drive, Pulaski,
follow
Wisconsin, 54162. Really good presentation. Thank you for doing that. And I like to hear all the things, like, I had a whole note of when you were doing that presentation, this whole thing is scribbled on, and your discussion answered almost all of it. And we have a mental health crisis, and it starts with our kids, so I'm really happy to see that you guys are taking that seriously and putting programs in place that'll help them. So thank you for that. 2 things I want to urge you on for as a board, please keep looking at these SRO times. So 2 of our elementary schools out of our 5 get 18 hours a week, and no other elementary school comes anywhere close to that. I don't feel like that's very fair, and that's not including our 2 biggest schools, elementary schools. And I just hope you keep looking at those times and maybe ultimately our partnership in general with 2 different stations. And then second, I also want to urge you guys to keep coming back to this developing staff. We had a couple really big losses that a lot of people, and myself included, are pretty sad about. Hopefully some really good gains as well. But I hope we don't go several more years just having ideas of what we could do, because nothing's getting held accountable. So maybe that's a monthly thing that we could be updated as a community on what we're doing for our staff to keep them here if they want to be here. There's a lot leaving that do want to be here, and that's all.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Ben Shepherd, 381 Sunbird Circle, Spesky. So again, with the presentation tonight, we heard a lot of, and I was going to say, I will say the joke. So if this was a drinking game and behaviors was a trigger word, we'd all be better friends right now. So I guess one thing I just want to say when it comes to behaviors, I think there's plenty of research out there that speak to food being a driver. And I think it happens on a regular basis where candy is handed out constantly in classrooms as rewards. Soda is sold in machines, I believe, in the middle school and in the high school.
Yeah, not during this, in the middle school, not during the school day. In the commons, or by the, not the commons, by the pool entryway. That's run by the pool.
Yep, and then really just a lot of the food options that are offered are processed and full of dyes and things like that. So as we look at behaviors, it's great to invest in a curriculum, but I think there's also some things that, and we said it tonight, or you guys said it tonight, you can control within the four walls. And one of those being what you offer as food. Because really that could help some behavior. That's it.
All right, thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Ben.
Hold on one second. All right, next workshop meeting is July 17th. Before that, we do have our board retreat on July 14th.
Do we have an agenda on
We
that?
don't. I'm working on that. So hold tight. I will get it for you. So next meeting, June 17th, back here. That will be another. That'll be a workshop meeting.
So
July
it's
17th. It's a business meeting. Yeah. Okay.
No workshop.
No workshop. Yeah. Business meeting back here at the district office. Now I'm ready for you.
I move that we
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any conversation? All those
Aye.
all those opposed? Motion carried. Have a good night, everyone.